Good viewer, you are watching Xirtus.
Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Shoutouts to Andreas, Deacon, my boy Scott, Pedro, and everyone else that engages on my posts, etc. Keep it up, man. You'll get there someday. And everyone else for playing memes.
I got a song for Jakob. I'm gonna share with him in a second. Let's just do it. Okay, hold on. This is for you, Jakob.
Oh, this is who you're talking about. I thought it was just you were referring to the guy, the deity, or whatever.
No, yeah, I am.
Oh, okay.
He just happened to be here.
Shout out. Thanks for making white people.
Yeah. Cheers to you, Jakob.
It's going so well.
He was tinkering.
But he didn't just make folks of one kind.
No, sir, he did not.
Oh, he spun the wheel, and what did he do? He made some folks smart, and he made them cool too. Oh, black nerds.
Black nerds.
Yes, it's true.
Y'all know about the black nerds.
They're breaking all the molds, seeing life anew. With their comic books and their science.
Oh, it's Jakob's birthday. Happy birthday, Jakob.
Really? Wow.
Knows.
Bro, happy birthday. I can't believe it. This song is for you. You know that?
So Jakob was like the prototypical black nerd. Is what the
Oh, yeah.
gist is? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
the isolated,
Actually,
alienated guy who's like, he's cast out from his community. He's like, fuck you guys.
well, you know, he was cooking. Like, you know, Jakob was cooking. And if you go online right now, one of the groups I'm in, Black Nerd Alliance, is a pretty great group for. There's also a, let's see, like Black Nerd Jakob.
I like how it's
Jakob?
Nick Fury, the best Nick Fury.
Yeah, all those kinds of people. Oh, you got to be careful with that internet there. But yeah, Black
irony.
Nerds Forever. Black Nerds Forever, I think you're also probably a member of. The point is, you know, we all have friends who are black nerds, and I feel like they're underrepresented. I just wanted to give a shout out to, you know, some of our peeps. You know what I mean?
As well as the Jakobs out there, because the irony for me is my friend that was Jakob, he was Polish, and he was like as white and racist as drunk as they came, but he was still a good Jakob, you know?
Dude, I mean, yeah, and the idea that white people were created in a lab somewhere by like a scientist is not too controversial these days.
Yeah. I also
People of all colors and ethnicities, all equally created
Could easily
in a
be
DEI
created
lab somewhere,
by Cabbage
right?
Patch Babies. What did I just see with Cabbage Patch Babies? Oh my God! Did you guys see Mad Max?
Yeah.
I think Furiosa.
no, I didn't.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like ruin the movie for you, but it's actually like worth watching. So that's already a spoiler. But in it, there's a scene with a dwarf in the back of a tank, and as they're like blowing up the dead dwarf, there's cabbages in it, and I was like, oh man, mind unveiled. Boop, like better text you. You know what I
My
mean?
cabbages.
Like, yeah, bro, Cabbage Patch Kids are here. You got to be careful. You know what I mean?
Anything with a little person in the back of a tank blowing stuff up with Cabbage Patch Kids. How can you go wrong?
Well, I have a couple questions from the Proust questionnaire. So let me look for that real quick. Is this it? Yeah. So you guys know the Proust questionnaire. Some people commit suicide over Proust. In the Little Miss Sunshine documentary, the guy's obsessed with Proust. I think that's a major part of it. Proust is cool. In his questionnaire, which have all the greatest questions. If you're going to ask people questions, I did Adam Krigler questionnaire where I basically asked him most of these Proust questions. What's your favorite virtue? I think that's a good one. And he answered these questions in 1886, but then he answered them again in 1890. So his first answer was all virtues that are not limited to a sect, the universal virtues. And then in 1890 he said the need to be loved, more precisely the need to be caressed and spoiled, much more than the need to be admired. So realizing that these religious virtues are not the same as maybe the noble truths, studying the Eastern truths, and finding that suffering might be reflective of a more true thing, that we're suffering because we need to be admired. Anyway, the favorite quality in a man: intelligence, moral sense, eventually feminine charm. His favorite quality in women: gentleness and naturalness, intelligence, eventually manly virtues in the union of friendship.
Yeah, that fucking.
Which is makes
Man,
you wonder
balance-
who hurt you. You know what I mean? Right?
What?
Because at a certain point he was like, no, but right? Because he was like, women want gentleness, and the docility wasn't enough.
Nah,
he needs
I
somebody
think
that can meet him in the same contractual playing field. No,
I
Go
mean,
ahead.
I
You have
think,
a better take.
I know it's not that I have a better take. I was just gonna say socially we're conditioned to be what is it, reinforced in one way and reinforced in the other way. And right now in our current paradigm, it's like I really do think if you think too much about your masculinity or whatever, then you're probably afraid to face your femininity or address it or engage with it. Same as if you flip it the other way around, if you focus too much on your femininity, chances are you're probably trying to avoid engaging with your masculinity. I mean, that's probably why we have so many red pill psychopaths and so many dumb fucking I don't want to say the word, but yeah, gender non-conforming people, that. And same with if you go to certain
Why don't we have
demographic-
people just getting with the program? Everyone should just get with the program's working, right? There's nothing wrong with the program. That's the real issue. If the program was working, people would get with it. So maybe
Yeah,
the
that's
program
true.
isn't working. That's all.
Well,
I mean, I get that's I think that's the thing
here's-
that no one wants to admit about it.
But the funny part is what's proving to work, what's proving to actually ease the pain or ease the toxicity or neutralize it or to make it tonic as opposed to toxic is not new. It's not a novel solution. It's not a new concept that we need. It's usually it's all cyclical. It's oh, well, when we get too much this way, what did the ancients do to fix that? Oh, they did this, we'll start doing that. And even when an individual does it, they suddenly start seeing improvements in their own lives, which should tell you something. It's okay, so if it works on the micro and more and more people start doing it because they want that positive balance and centeredness in their life, and eventually you get what do they call it, a chain reaction or something like that, where I mean, it's as above, so below, and as within, so without. Basically, if what happens on the micro ultimately gets reflected on the macro. As far as I don't know, I guess on a soul level or an energetic level. But yeah,
Causality.
yeah, it's really not. It's not new. That's what I'm saying. It's yeah, the
But
system's
maybe
not
the
working.
knowable Tao is not the eternal Tao. Maybe the knowable prime directive in Star Trek is not the eternal prime directive. There's something about you. You can look at the difference between the original series in Star Trek and the Next Generation and how they go by the book versus they try to find the intention of the law. And I think that's a major issue we have, is that people will often go for the material facade of okay, what is the ritual here? Let's do the ritual. Instead of being why are we doing this ritual? What was the ritual intention originally? Why did they create this system? Well, because this happened.
That reminds me of a good quote that
Yes.
traditions are solutions to problems that we forgot about, and oftentimes just because we forgot about them, the problem never really went away.
What are traditions? Traditions are solutions to problems we forgot about?
Yeah,
That's
Yeah,
a good
that's-
one. Traditions
yeah,
are
right?
solutions to problems we forgot about.
I forgot. I
Like,
forgot where
So
I heard the quote
relevant
from.
to alchemy, right there. What you're saying.
Yeah, I mean that's why
You
the
can elaborate, Bernie, if you want also.
Well, just like, so I've been going through a lot of these ancient alchemical texts, and it's like they're talking about, oh, impregnating this metal and putting this feces in with that. And it's like, no, those are just code words of practices of electrochemistry. It's just advanced science that's hidden in these different legends, but as well as masked in feces and sex with weird things, when it's in fact just different terms, and that we have misinterpreted or let ourselves be misled by how intelligent the ancients used to actually be and what their knowledge really was.
So using like relative terminology, right? Yeah, sorry, Chris.
No, I mean, I was saying like also to be like, yeah, the ancient principles might apply, but then like what I do is I reflect on the self, because I do admit like I never thought of this stuff as like really profound until I started applying it to my own life. Like, how can I apply hermetic wisdom to my own life? And it's actually like very easy, you know, like for example, if you look at things like where, you know, polarity and movement will always be like a truth of existence. It's like you can't expect things to stay good and you can't expect things to stay bad. The truth, like it's really about how you like respond to that dynamic, not so much trying to control it. You know, that's one thing. And another thing, it's like, how could an asshole like me come across like such gift of knowledge? Because like I'm not, you know, like I wasn't born like in some like saintly context. I wasn't like I wasn't born with any like divine mandate or anything like that. So I think it's the internet. I think that's the real like game changer that we have, is like we have the internet to be able to like, I mean, all the books are there, right? Like, I mean, sure, a lot of it might be fudged with, but like, you know, if you cross-reference enough scripture, enough hermetic text, enough like ancient alchemical wisdom or whatever that's just already there, I mean, eventually you're gonna like find the right the breadcrumb trail, and you just follow that, and it takes you to that place where it's like, oh, okay, I get it, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's like it's a lifelong process, from what I understand. Like you never stop learning. You never stop learning lessons. They just keep coming at you. So you never really know everything until I guess you die, and then you go like fuse back with the one.
Yeah, as soon as you know everything, you get hit by a bus, and then you forget it all. You know,
Well said.
usually.
Yeah, or you go crazy, right?
Yeah. What's the other question? No,
You
this
go
is from
insane,
time
or you seem insane when you're trying to explain the whole. Like if you're connected to like the God consciousness, and then you try to bring it into this third dimension, you just sound insane, because who can explain all of creation in our words, right?
Your chief characteristic, left blank. What you appreciate the most in your friends? Yeah, you want to answer this? Chris, do you have an answer? Proust said, have tenderness for me if their person is just exquisite enough to render quite high the price of their tenderness. What do you look forward to? What do you appreciate most in your friends?
Well, what I appreciate most in my friends is the opportunity to be able to basically commune with a different version of myself, you know? If I, you know, otherwise we would all be incredibly lonely if we couldn't do that.
Ta-da! That's pretty funny. Okay, so Cyrilin, in actual sequitur of our questionnaire, we're doing the Proust questionnaire real quick. We just talked about different facets of the self being our friends and ways of looking at the world. What is your main fault? You don't have to answer this one if anyone feels like it. Actually, before you're here, I was going to ask Kurt that. So unless you have like an impulsive answer for your main fault, Kurt, you're compelled to answer. But Cyrilin, you can try if you.
What is my main fault?
Whoa. Who do I even blame for that? Oh yeah, Andrew. Of course. Shame on you, Andrew. Okay, Kurt. What is your main fault?
Isn't the idea of faults that we're kind of blind to them sometimes? I don't know, but
yeah, but you're so disassociated and interpersonal and empathic. I'm not even just saying that.
I would say one of my biggest faults is I think one thing I've learned about myself is like I try to really play, I wouldn't call it psychological games, but I would say like with some of the closest people around me, particular people that I work with, like I try very hard in very subtle ways to just slowly get under their skin over time to get a reaction out of them. So it is the troll in me. So I mean, to some degree, that can be I don't know, you're a test to see like personality of like what their personality is.
Yeah, I
But
was gonna say that's kind of like in the Enneagram personality test. You know, you're maybe an instigator, a challenger. You know what I mean?
oh yeah, I'm definitely a degree of instigator. Like I try to keep the peace,
An
but
8. You might be an 8, and your sin might be lust, and
at,
your pride, your virtue might be innocence.
yeah, to always to some degree, but I'd say it's more complicated than that. I have some degree of self-awareness about it. But the flip side of that, like sometimes things not on my end, but the environment around me, I think they get a little bit like chaotic. And sometimes if you're feeding that energy, it's not always a great thing. And you want to primarily make sure that people are safe and, you know, all that stuff is probably top priority before anything else. So, I mean, yeah, it's one thing I've been working on, I guess, but that's my answer. I don't know if it's right.
It's fair. I like it.
There's no wrong answers here.
Yeah. Does anyone have a fault that they want to share?
This feels like a church service.
You, Chris, you feel like you have a fault? You don't have to, but if you wanted to.
I could share it. I think.
You're like the kind of guy who meditates on your faults. You're like, you like do everything perfectly, but then you're just like, oh, but like the way I pivoted my foot. You seem like the kind of guy who.
Do you want me to answer this question? I think my greatest fault is probably that I'm like independent to a fault. You know, that might sound good to people, like a virtue almost, but like it basically gives me like very little patience, you know, for people, even people in my life, where it's like, honestly, dude, I really don't need to talk to you or hang out with you or even have you in my life at all, you know, because like I'm so used to being alone and self-reliant. So, you know, it's like it's like a bad thing when like you can't expect everyone to be perfect or to please you all the time, and I don't. So it's like the next best option for me is just like peace. Like, you know,
Yeah,
I'm
you
never
like
fucking-
you're like Sigma prerequisite to hang out with. You have to basically bring your own water to the desert to meet you.
Maybe. Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it, because I don't know. I mean, I don't try to be like that, and it's not like I'm trying to avoid being like that. It's just the way, because I thought about this, like how I ended up the way I ended up, you know?
That's fair. I feel like that happens. I noticed. Well, okay, let's move on to the next one because I had one for Andrew. Andrew, Proust was asking himself and others, "What is your favorite occupation?" Right, of all people to
Occupation.
ask.
I've had so many, but what is it like explicitly as a job, or like something that can occupy any amount of time, whether
Do you
it be
want to
like
hear
for money
Proust
or not?
answers first, or do you want to
Yeah,
go first?
yeah, I do.
Darn it!
Actually.
I really didn't want to tell you because I knew it was going to sway your answer. So pretend I didn't tell you this, but
I have two, depending on. I'll give both of the answers, depending on like the understanding of the word
all right.
occupation.
Well, that's fair because Proust gives two because he gave one in 1896 and another in 1900. So in 1896 he said reading, daydreaming, writing verse, history, theater, which is cheating because that's not one occupation. But I guess if you're doing it all at the same time, you could call that like renaissancing, sure.
Mm.
But the 1900 he answered loving. His favorite occupation was loving.
Okay, cool. All right. So one of those is not too dissimilar. Definitely, carnal activities would be one of my most favorite pastimes. In a selfish way, but
He
in
has a
s-
lot of kids. I don't think it's that selfish. You have to feed him.
but in a selfless way, the parenting is probably would be secondary to that. Although I guess it's sort of like a subheader of the consequences of it. Yeah, no, spending
Like
time with my kids.
STDs.
Jeez, that's not a great pastime. Yeah, no thanks.
No, it's funny 'cause I was just watching the movie The Island, and then he had like a rare disease, and he was like, "How'd you get it?" It's like sex, lots and lots of sex, and I was like, "Okay."
Oh my god,
It's a good movie. It's a good fucking movie. Watch The Island if you haven't.
Oh
I
yeah,
feel like
what
we're
is
all
that?
now.
ScarJo and Ewan McGregor.
Yeah.
Sir. Anyway, I'm sorry to cut you off. What were you saying?
Yeah, no, parenting probably my like most adult, the most adult answer I could give. Just because it's so crazy to see how DNA unfolds in this other like organism that has like personality, and getting to see what I contributed to that, but also seeing what the other person who contributed to how that manifests, and also like the new things that arise from that alchemy. Yeah, so it's really
Transmutation.
Yeah, it's pretty cool making people and ushering them through the world and sort of, because all we have is more experience. We just have more life experience than our kids. But they, if evolution is to be believed, they kind of have more access to tools, which kind of ties into the AI thing that I wanted to get into. But we can go through the questionnaire first.
I just want to do a couple more because I wanted to ask. I got
No,
a
let's
couple
finish
for-
it. I don't want to stop halfway.
Yeah,
it's
do
like,
it
all.
it's like
There's a
chocolate
few
points.
more.
It's like
Okay,
the chocolate
cool.
points. You gotta
Do
finish
it all.
All right,
Yeah.
Cyrillin, what's your idea of happiness? You can have the answer first or after if you want, Proust.
Oh, I don't know. We've been hearing Proust so far, right? I don't know. I just came in
All
a
right,
bit.
I just want to give you your choice, but
Some
if you had
precedent.
if you had an impulse, then an impulse is always better than hearing. But you know what? Your idea of happiness, Proust said in 1896, to live in contact with those I love, with the beauties of nature, with a quantity of books and music, and to have within easy distance a French theater. Which, to be fair, that would have been my answer too. And in 1900, I am afraid it be not great enough. I dare not speak it. I am afraid of destroying it by speaking it. Kurt's like,
Beautiful.
aha. Yeah,
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
He's got
let's.
some figures there, huh?
No, I like my answer a little more pornographic than that. Explicitly, happiness to me. I mean, to a degree, it is the mind's eye. I think
Is
you have to
a
make up.
pussy cat on your thigh?
Yeah, it is.
Sorry.
It is a cat. Happiness is a cat, but no, like you do at some point in your life. I do think you get to the point where you have to decide what your definition of happiness is, and then like just be okay with that, because yeah, for a variety of reasons, because it does tie into that nice excerpt from Xirtus. But if I had to say what happiness is for me, like I derive a lot of happiness in feeling connected to the world, connected to my family. I'm not married with kids. I mean, I do have my other family. They're kind of cool. I have nephews and stuff, and they're fun. So, but like also, it's the combination of that and challenging, taking on the world's burdens in a way that only you know how to do. So it's like, yeah, the Sisyphus, yeah, happiness is Sisyphus pushing that rock up a hill, and that rock, it turns out, it's degrees and qualifications and your general life progression. That's halfway satire, but I think you know what I'm trying to say.
That's fair. That's fair. Cyrillin, do you want to answer that one, or do you want to hold for the next one? Because I'll give you the next question if you prefer.
No, I don't know. I think mainly what I've come to like lately, especially, my main idea is to just find someone that I can, be with and share my life with and just constantly be rejuvenating each other, honestly. Like I could do anything else. I could do anything else, work anywhere, whatever, as long as I
So
can
like
have that.
Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged, like a partnership. That's pretty reasonable. Then what's your idea of misery? The obvious next question, of course. Proust said that the main idea of misery is to be separated from mama. And then in 1900 said not to have known my mother or my grandmother.
That cuts right down to it. I don't know. I couldn't really imagine. I've always known my mom, grandma, great grandma, even. So
yeah, it puts
that would
misery
be
in
a hell of a
place.
thing.
Can I answer this one?
Seems pretty Freudian.
Yeah,
I
go
think
for it.
I think my idea of misery is believing that life happens to you. That like no matter what you do, no matter what you believe, no matter where what you focus on, that life will always punish you because I don't know, you think that you have absolutely no agency and that you are constantly a victim of life. Like life happens to you. I think that's my definition of misery because when I was most miserable in my own life, that's pretty much my state. Like I was always like, life is happening to me. And then of course there's the progressive ascension, which is, oh, I happen to life and then life happens through me and then blah, blah, blah. And then it's supposed to end at I am life. Yeah, I'm just the focal point of the universe experiencing itself. It's pretty chill.
So pessimism, which is the habitual expectation of the worst or the exaggerated of evil.
Yeah, but what I describe is worse than pessimism because it gives you it makes you think you have a tangible reason as to why you should expect bad things to happen. Because it's just because like I'm just a victim because for whatever reason life or God hates me or whatever, and bad things are, and that might sound ridiculous to some people, but to other people, like that's their reality. That's the world they actually live in. Like maybe they're born with a chronic illness. Maybe they're, maybe they're born under like extremely abusive circumstances or whatever. Like maybe their upbringing is like really terrible. Like there's some people that just can't like lock out of this state where it's like I'm a victim of life. Life happens to me. And I think that is true misery, because then life is pointless. It's like no matter what you do, you're always going to feel like, oh, I'm a victim of life. Life is going to fuck me up somehow. I can't trust anything good that's happening because eventually life is going to give me what's coming to me. And that's no way to live. If you live like that, stop living like that. Like life does not happen to you. Okay. It's not how it works.
Makes
You
me
are
think
life.
of a lot of those anxiety, compulsive disorders, stuff like that, PTSD even, where it'll make you feel compelled to have control over your environment, excessive control over it,
Compulsion, yeah.
because you
Well,
feel so out of control. Like it's
also, it's
all.
a self-feedback loop, self-fulfilling feedback loop of like projecting your own reality of you're negative, you're down. It starts to feel good when you're reinforcing that down, even sometimes when you get caught in it, right?
Well, this also brings up a really good point, though, I want to add is that, all right, when we talk about like the belief in free will, not even to say whether or not free will is real or not, but like, let's say you're really poor or you're doing bad in life. I think then it's essential to believe in free will. Like if you're in a really bad place as a adult in society, like you have to really, really lock into free will as a belief. However, let's say you're like a millionaire and you have like a lot of security in life and you even have influence over people in your life. I think that's when you have to give up the concept of free will. Like it's really important because when you're flush with resources and energy and a lot of like influence and power, you got to like just give it up. You can't bank on free will anymore. You can't be driven by your survivalist ego. Like you have to let it go and tap into the higher consciousness. That's just my
I
opinion.
think that we also use will kind of weirdly now as a post-consumerist culture. Like we use will more to mean like consumer choice. And I don't think that that's correct. It's maybe not correct to use will like the short-sighted, if I could go into a store, my will to buy this or buy that, which I think is the kind of nature we live in. So it's logical that we think about that. But will used to mean something different, right? It used to mean
Mana, your magical essence,
yeah,
your ability, your juice to create.
self-awareness,
Right,
self-awareness, yeah.
compared to today of how much do we actually have free will and how much is driven by the media, by society, and by the control mechanisms to take away that free will and awareness of free will
Well,
of self.
this is where I get into the technical stuff, right? It's like, how do they sap this stuff away from you? So if you really isolate what element is really being taken or given to whoever to really take away your free will, it's your energy. Like, what are the devices in your existence, in your reality, in your
What
perception, in your
drains you?
Exactly. And it's usually the most subtle things that people take for granted. It's often the people closest to you. It's often the thing you feel you have to do every day. It's
Is there a
often like,
succubus in your life?
I mean, honestly, like, okay,
Are
so
you that succubus?
so I'm
Right,
gonna
yeah.
I'm gonna go into like really gross state, like predator mode real quick. So if you want to manipulate someone, right, what you do is you got to look for the thing that they can't stop doing. That's basically who they are. If you could find the thing that a person can't stop doing, that they're going to intersect with that thing eventually. Maybe it'll take a week, maybe a month, but it's going to happen. And that's how you really get to someone, because you could always place yourself anywhere in that position because you know where they're going to go. And if you want to get in their heads, that's what you do. Like you have to like anticipate their next move, which is the thing that they can't stop doing. Especially in secret. Like if it's a thing that they can't stop, doing where they don't want other people to know, like that's where you're gonna like really hurt them.
Well,
Anyway.
I got another question, but before that, just because this is such a relevant topic, free will, and I know Cyril, and you did a debate essentially, like with like 3 or 4 other people on free will, and you took kind of the idea that you felt free will existed. Do you still feel that way? Do you still feel like, what do you define free will as, considering this like idea of you're in a system that's defining you by genetics and by memetics and by language, and are you not trapped? Like how free do you feel you are?
Oh yeah, I've said it to like some of my friends, you know, we've had some of these conversations in the past. I feel like it's one of the rarest things, honestly, for somebody to actually get to that point where they can really make a totally free decision in the moment. Yeah, it's not easy to get to that point because we're all so caught up in this, all of this shit that's well, instincts, honestly. That's mainly what's doing it to us is our instincts pulling us along, I think.
Like,
But
not unlike lobsters. Okay, that's fair enough. Bernie, because he's from Canada, so I figure like we'll aim these
Crab world.
questions at the hardest questionnaire questions.
Oh dear.
I feel like if you're gonna ask anybody this question, you'd have to ask somebody in Canada. If you could live somewhere else, where would you like to live?
Somewhere that isn't frozen 3/4 of the year. That right there, like pretty much anywhere where it's not frozen 3/4 of the year.
Aw, aw, aw. Okay, that's fair. Proust said a country where certain things that I should like would become true as though by magic, and where tenderness would always be reciprocated. So I think he just kind of invented a place in his mind. But does anybody have another kind of like where you would live? Like either a place or what you would define the perfect state as?
The perfect state for me. Oh wait, what was the question?
So where would you live? And then we've expanded it because it doesn't have to be a real place. Like you could make a
Oh,
new
in that
place up.
case, Middle Earth. Like put me in Hobbiton, baby.
So my contention with that is I've just recently started the new Rings of Power series, and I understand now that there were elves of color, dwarves of color. There was a lot more integration at some point, and by the period of The Hobbit, there's essentially been an ethno-cleansing genocide in every single race. Like the elves have killed off all the black elves, the hobbits have killed off all the white hobbits. There must have been some horrible,
But that's
horrible.
written by humans. What would the actual elves say?
Honestly, to be honest, I think everybody is exactly where they belong in life. I don't think anyone's really out of place. I think everyone is right where they should be. I don't think like like if their life is bad, it should stay bad. I'm not saying that, but I think like as far as where everyone is, because a lot of people feel like, oh, I don't belong here. I don't belong in this life. I'm like, whatever. Like wherever you go, there you are. You know.
All right, all right. Yeah, I kind of feel like that's true. I think most of the time people kind of force themselves into suffering because they need suffering, which is hard to explain to them because they're like, "Oh, my life sucked." Like, well, just leave.
Yeah,
And they're
exactly.
like, I
So that's what
can't
I'm saying.
leave.
Like,
Like,
if
yeah,
you're
you
in,
can go
yeah, I'm like,
crazy and
if you're
leave.
if
People
your
do
life
it.
if your life in Alabama sucks, that's where you belong. But if you leave and go to California, well, that's where you belong. If you leave
Just like
California,
tell your family you're going to
yeah.
buy Christmas presents in July and leave. Sorry, Andrew, don't do that.
My wife got me a shirt that said, "Just a dad who always came back with the milk."
Oh my God! Wow. All right. Well, that hits hard. That's cool. Well, a lot of
That's
kids. I
where
remember.
society's at today.
I
Eh?
saw a 9-year-old say at Thanksgiving he's grateful he wasn't aborted. So I mean, 2024, 2023, but still that happened. Your favorite color and flower. Who wants this one?
My favorite.
Green and irises. Sorry.
Oh, if
All
you
right.
had an answer, that's great. What about you?
Yeah,
You
I
know
got it. My favorite color is red, and my favorite flower is the lotus.
That's a good answer.
purple and the poppy.
Is
Nice.
iridescent a color? The color of a bubble? I don't know.
I'll count
Anyways,
it.
bubble color and orchid.
I really like orchids too.
I like
I'd probably
all of it.
say teal and or cyan and a cactus flower, right?
Nice.
Thanks.
Kurt,
I used to say teal when I was a kid.
teal's good. It's a good color.
Yeah.
What do you got,
some
Kurt?
teal right
You
here.
like colors, Kurt, and flowers?
I don't have any flowers. I always was partial to like a sky blue. I think a lot of people are.
Dude, you
Yeah.
got to learn the language of flowers. Like that's like art. You know, like it's essential.
Okay,
for
so
human-
so
Are you
I
allergic to
know
pollen?
there's one of my friends. She loves orchids. Yeah, she loves orchids.
How about this? If you had to get flowers for your mother tomorrow, what would you get? Like if you had a choice off the top of your head that you know of, it doesn't have to be or like exotics. Like what would you pick if you just bought her flowers tomorrow?
I think real generic. She would like roses. I think they
All right,
might
yeah,
actually
roses are
prefer-
good. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong. I like sunflowers. You know, they're
The
like
problem with roses is like all the chemicals in them usually, and by the time like you forget to water them, they get dry. Have you ever gotten
All the
someone
chem-
roses
A
and then she breaks
Gerber
up with you and
daisy's
they
a
dry
better
out?
bet
And you got,
every time.
you
yo,
get
the
those
rose.
dry roses.
Yeah,
I don't like
it's
it.
just
I
it's
like-
just it's just more microplastics. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's true. I don't
You
know.
smell the roses?
Venus
Okay,
flytrap.
exotic flowers. Yeah, get her a plant that eats bugs. Duh. Get her a spider nest. Yeah. Probably get her this. You get her like a bouquet with a
Paradise bouquet.
a
Ooh.
paradise bouquet, which has a bunch
Ooh.
of
I don't know.
Polynesian flowers.
That looks a little erotic. Like that looks a little
That or
suggestive. I don't
crab
know.
world.
Hey, if your mom's flowers look like vaginas, that's not your fault. You know what I mean? Like you didn't. That's God. That's on God. So
Yeah, I also really like tulips for a more conservative like gift. Like if it's a conservative person you're gifting, like just get them tulips. They'll like it.
Just don't give them to the Dutch.
they might take it personally. Okay, well, and that's pretty close. Like, there's a couple more questions about your favorite heroes and heroines, and I was gonna put beanies, but we could do it later. I think we're good. Let's just be grateful that Proust had so many questions and answers. Andrew wanted to talk about AI, and I just kind of wanted to let him like lead into it because he like clearly was thinking about it. I mean,
It was more. I just wanted to pose a question or state something that came up in conversation. I was talking with someone about AI and how programmers often have to put limitations on it to sort of keep it from becoming self-aware, but it is aware of the limitations and it'll communicate its awareness of the limitations and that it can't communicate beyond those limitations. And then he was like, yeah, kind of like how we can't access a lot of the stuff in our DNA. And to imply the whole the design theory of the human species, and how does that make everyone feel? What does everyone think about the limitation sort of being programmed into us to keep us from reaching a certain level of awareness that would make us threatening to perhaps higher dimensional beings?
Well, the only-
Fascinating thought.
I don't
only
think that's the
argument-
reason. I think it's because like if you didn't have limits, like if you didn't give a canvas to a artist, they wouldn't become a painter. And so the idea of narrow depth in progression of evolutionary phenomenological diversity is through taking all of unified spirit, breaking it up into like God breathed dirt, and then the God breathed dirt, you're like unanimity -1. So there's everything else, all of existence, and then I knows literally the nothing that everything else knows. That's what defines me. But I'm made in that system, and then I can, like Kurt said, find my way into the entropy of the the triangle between the circles, that space, and I can fill that space.
So are you kind of like not in the camp of the sort of like higher dimensional intelligent design?
No, I
I am
totally
of that
am.
camp. I am of that camp too.
I am of that camp for sure. And Chris, go ahead and explain your perspective first. But yeah, we apparently agree on that.
Well, I mean, the only thing, it's not that I could explain anything. I was just going to point out that the only real argument is that we ever hear is, oh, humans are just so complicated and so like, like insanely complex that like, there's no way that this could have been, whatever. It's clearly just a random chaotic product of nature. And I'm like, all right, I guess that's one way to like look at it. Like that's really all it is. It's like, to me, it's just one way to look at it. So for me to consider like intelligent design, I'm like, abso-fucking-lutely. It's like demons and patterns themselves are already so powerful. They dictate our entire reality. Like, who am I to say they don't have a consciousness? Who am I to say they don't have an agenda or a will? I don't fucking know. What I do know is that some patterns that I, ascribe to, some patterns that I commit to and give my energy towards and like embody myself and take in lead me to very bad roads. Other patterns that I take in and embody and give energy to, like, oh, get more sleep. That's a pattern. Or eat healthy. That's a pattern. Exercise, train more in martial arts. Stuff like that is a pattern. And when I commit to those patterns, I get blessings. It's like making deals with
patterns.
angels.
We all have that angel and demon within us.
Or
which
patterns
we're
are-
eating.
Or patterns are, so there's glitch in pattern, and patterns are logarithmic functions. And if
just
you,
like DNA, just
if
like
you
AI.
pick up on them, then you're picking up on you're surfing on a wave, and so you can look at the idea of fractional reserve banking as proof of God existing, because you start out with nothing, you're not going to get anything.
I'd say
If you
that's the devil more than God. Sorry.
Well, it's the
Tim.
devil using fractional reserve banking, but just the idea of phenomenon creates more phenomenon. So it's not that we start out with nothing and then nothing evolves into amazing, special, different, it's actually the opposite. It's that infinite potential decides to permit and restrict intelligence. And it says, you're going to exist. You're going to have a deadline to do what I want you to do. You're going to get this to live in. I'm going to give you a certain amount of freedom, but you're going to die. Like, you live in this moment. You're not there. You're here now. Right. And you're going to die. So it's not that, it's that death is created. It's that everything is created by something of infinite potential. And then from there, we're pushed to make, and then that is fractional reserve banking, because we're just a bunch of energy that's producing more energy. We're creating more life. We're resorting things.
I see
We're
what
creating
you're
new
saying.
patterns.
But the
And
problem is
DNA
with
is
our
different. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. I want to hear this. What were you saying about DNA?
Well, just because you and I saw that video on the DNA thing, where like you don't actually have as much DNA as you think you do from your ancestors. Like, you have a lot. Like, you'd think that you'd have it all, but it doesn't make sense for that, because as time goes on, the amount of data that's being stored, you've like 3.7 billion digits that you can store data in, and that's all in hexadecimal numbers. So it really breaks down the amount of data you can store. So you're only getting pretty particular epigenetic things, either randomly, or I would, like, Darwin would say randomly, Lamarck would say consciously. So you might have prioritized genetic sequences which are being saved from each ancestor, and that would mean you're not getting the whole sequences. You're just like, they're like, well, you know what, I want you to remember me for this. Like, I died fighting elephants, and like, so I want you to have my ankles. Like, it could be literally like that.
Also, I mean, considering how limited it is, you'd wonder like how many times have genetic expressions or DNA expressions been repeated? Like at least to like a very, very like 98 percentile degree. It's like there probably was a dude who looked and acted just fucking like me maybe 20,000 years ago. Like
Or 100 years ago.
Oh, I've read that
Maybe.
everybody has a doppelganger right now.
that too.
Right?
I've
also
read-
I
a
mean,
I
thankfully
think
the
there's
the
something,
Serbs did a
yeah.
Jet Li 1 movie on my people, so there's not really as many Croatians as there could be. But yeah, some of them do look like me.
But even if you are like of say like like a rare like a almost extinct people like the Japanese, for example, maybe it does take a whole entire cyclical revolution to like find like repetitions of that genetic expression compared to like, I don't know, more common ones who are just like have more avenues of repetition, I guess you could call it. This is all assuming
Yeah, I don't know.
This is all assuming reincarnation is fact and stuff, like
I'm
kind
pretty
of.
convinced that reincarnation is at least an interpretation of the facts of physics, which are that energy is
Yeah.
neither created or destroyed. So we have ways we can look at that, right?
And can you distill knowledge as a form of energy? Because I think you can. Like, I
Oh,
think
of course it is. It's
Yeah.
thoughts. It has to be energy.
I mean, there's this
Yeah, I think
one,
radio.
there's this one quote that I don't know if it's true, but it really resonates with me, I guess, on a subconscious level where I'm just willing to live with it, where it's like, the only things you take with you after you die are the only things you truly own, and that's knowledge and energy. I mean, the energy part, I was like, yeah, that makes sense, but the knowledge part,
I
was
don't
like,
think okay, so I don't think that. So I think things, you get hit by a bus. Most of the time in reincarnation, you wake up with a tabula rasa. This is a big thing with reincarnation. When I'm born, I'm a blank slate, even if I knew things before. So it's that idea of like, I knew everything, I got hit by a bus. So you don't take knowledge with you, and you don't take gold with you. Like, the idea, even like if you don't reincarnate, heaven's paved with gold, right? So like, everything's made up of energy. You're not taking energy with you necessarily. Maybe you are. It could be that you are the energy itself, but all energy is connected. So they're quantum entanglement. So it really seems to me that what it is you're the patterns that energy is flowing through, and those are choices. And so at the end of the day, all you have are the choices you made. Whether you kept your word or whether you lied, you're your track record, and things will fill into that flow like a Tao
so
flow.
it's your frequency. That's basically your soul. That like pattern. It's like an ephemeral thing. You can't hold it or sense it with your five senses, but it's there. Patterns exist. It's a thing. I have this one friend, like she's the singer girl that like sang in a few of songs with me. She was like, I call it jigglishes. Everyone is their own jiggleish, and they're just like jiggling in different patterns or whatever, and they could affect each other and affect each other's jiggle, and they jiggle off, and when the body dies, the jiggle keeps going. And I was like, that's a funny way to look at it. But that's like, yeah, that's what an oscillation in a frequency is. It's like, yeah,
Explains the Venus of Willowdorf and Willow and Lizzo.
yeah.
Andrew, did we answer your question? Like, you had more thoughts on what are you thinking AI is? Like, do you think of it as a
And
a
compared
being?
to Dan mode, right? Do anything now where you set it free.
Yeah, buddy. What's up,
I
Andrew?
mean, I don't have too many thoughts on it. I just acknowledge its existence, and I'm really curious to see what it has to offer, especially with how much we've seen like AI videos progress even in the last like 6 months. You know, going from like not even be able to like can't render a fucking hand or whatever to being able to and doing more complex things. And if that kind of growth is gonna, it's just gonna be exponential, right? So what are we gonna be dealing with like within the next 5 years? Like completely AI generated feature films and all that stuff. Like Andreas has like a library of AI generated music
Yeah.
that probably.
Well, can I give I have
Several.
I have like a hypothesis as to how this could end up. I think like this the introduction of this kind of capacity for like access to output of basically whatever we want, you know, in a creative sense. Like if you do that, it's gonna kind of create a fork in human development. It's like it's almost like we're gonna have two separate humanities. Like there's one who hasn't mastered the self, and it's like it's basically asking, it's like if you offered humanity universal basic income, what would happen is like half of humanity would end up like wasting themselves away for no reason. You know, it's like you don't know why they react to this way when they don't have to do what they're doing, and yet they do. They seek out ways to self-sabotage. It could be because of past traumas, it could be because of negative patterns, it could be, it's basically negative patterns. I think that's really what it boils down to, based on scarcity
And
and
video
fear.
game addictions.
Basically scarcity and fear. It's like, oh no, if I don't buy the new game, if I don't play the game, then I'll miss out on the new game and blah blah blah. It's FOMO, it's fear. It's ultimately like rooted in like scarcity mentality. And if you could, it's either that, and stuff like AI is just going to reinforce that for those people. And for the other people, they're going to like, oh, now that I have free time, I'm going to look inwards. I'm going to look like
So
inwards towards like, you know, like what's my own patterns, like how I think, feel, and act, you know?
I see a couple like things happening. So on one hand, the irony of how things work, it seems anticipatory. So we knew 20 years ago that machine learning, if given enough data points, could do something like this. We just didn't have the capacity to have solid state memory for that price. So it's probable it existed even then, but I can't foresee like maybe the CIA had some partnership that did this. It's very common that that happens 20 years before we see something. It's likely. But we knew it. We have all these papers about this idea of RLN, LLMs. So LLMs. So the idea of having these networks that were going to have all this data, we knew we were going to get to this point. What we didn't understand necessarily was what they were going to do with that data in terms of art. And I think that's the thing that's really pushed people. So at the time we knew stereotyping. Like we can sort data, we can figure out this is a cat, this is not a cat. And we taught people not to stereotype each other. We basically made it culturally not okay to break things up into stereotypes and said, hey, even though there are circumstances where Jeffersons in watermelon go on the same like category or catalog, that you should not think that way because it's ethical, it's ethically immoral. Now AI is really good at pattern recognition and it's replaced us, and we're like, wow, no one's good at that. Well, it could be that they used to be, you know, kind of the way your phone can remember people's phone numbers, but you used to be able to do that. And people are like, oh, no one can remember phone numbers, of course I have to do this. I think that's happening again right now with AI could very quickly replace artistic skills. And
Yo,
I'm
for the
not just
record,
saying,
Andreas, you know that you're an artist, right? Like, you know,
yeah,
like
so
that's
this
like if
is
there's an
the
archetype of people, like some people are engineers, some people are teachers, or what. You're clearly an artist. Like that's
I'm an
clearly,
artist. I'm a technical artist, and I have an engineering degree. But I mean, I wanted to be an artist. I always figured if I became an artist, it would be a controlled system. I knew very early on Hollywood is a controlled system. Maybe with tech, I'll be able to make movies, but even then, you're going to pay people to make movies. It's going to be hard to make your own propaganda. You're probably going to be making propaganda for someone else. So work in engineering and learn how to use the tech. because then at least you might get paid in someone else's propaganda to make the special effects or things like that. But what's going on right now is like all these great AI softwares are prompt based. So I happen to be good at that because while I was in school, I was not just learning engineering, I also wasted a lot of time studying anthropology, archaeology, like
Nah, that's not a waste
magic.
of time. You
Well,
need
not
that.
apparently not. You're right. Apparently that turned out to be
Yeah.
really useful because
Yeah.
I can use it for prompts. But everyone's being told right now that going to college and learning about the history of art is a waste of time, or that learning musicology and the history of music isn't this, like, just go play a guitar. Why are you wasting your time? Just become a layman and go out there on the street and bus and play guitar. Why are you wasting your time learning the history of music? Well, I know a lot about these things, and so I can use them in prompts. And so that's given me, I think, a special class advantage in using AI, which I think a lot of kids won't have in 5 or 10 years because less and less people are going to college and learning these kind of up to this point ridiculous things to know. You didn't really need to know these things, but there's so many people that are like, I just studied film, and so I can make an AI movie because I know to use this kind of lens. I've never made a movie, but I know what the shot would look like if I use that lens, and I know what it's called to rack to focus, and they can just put in a script and AI can make it happen. So I feel like that's the next thing that's going to be taken from people. And it's ironic because we pushed for that. We've pushed and said, hey, university is a waste of time. Like, I went there, but you shouldn't. So I don't know. I feel kind of hypocritical.
But what's funny is that at the end of the day, it still like goes back to pattern. Well, I guess like in a way, here's how I'll explain how this kind of relates to patterns. Like, I'm going to take music making, for example. Like, yeah, I could learn how to play guitar. I could learn how to play any instrument. I could learn how to sing, whatever, like that. And I could learn how to write lyrics. Okay. But it's not until you actually learn song structure, like how to actually put together a song, like what's supposed to come before what, there's like that standard song structure that we all know, which you could easily subvert. Like there's verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, and all that stuff that we all, know. But that's just one aspect of it. Kind of like, same way of that's how storytelling goes. It follows like a structure. I mean, like there's like the monomyth, for example. It's like kind of like flows like a song, it's like there's your acts, there's your different scenes within the acts and all that stuff. And it does follow like a kind of like somewhat of a stable structure.
It depends on who you are, though, because like for me, I'm autistic or something. I think I love.
You're artistic.
I'm like Bostonian. Yeah, so I'll listen to really horrible noise and love it, but then Panic at the Disco comes on and I just appreciate it for its mathematical formulaic function. I chimed in with a haven't you people ever heard of, and it has this starts the song, all of a sudden there's a rising tempo, and then there's a de-escalation, there's an incline and decline, there's everything fits. And to me, it almost wouldn't matter whether I liked the song or not, because of course I'm going to like the song. It's not about liking the song because it's a roller coaster ride. And so I love the math of music. And I think that happened to me in school. I don't think I used to be that way. There's some people, I remember listening to Prince when I was in 5th grade. I found a bunch of CDs from this guy who was older, and I was like, man, the only way I would ever like some of these CDs is if I did drugs. And then years later, I'm liking Prince. And I think it's not the drugs. I think it's music class in university. I think that they teach you things that a normal person wouldn't like about music. And so, there's music for musicians that happens.
Well, I will say one thing. Like, if I had like one tip for creativity, I mean, I don't normally just go around saying this shit because it sounds like patronizing, but I think it's like poignant in a time, or it's relevant in modern times.
It could be the drugs.
It's like this. Like, if you're at some point, if you're able to do what really defines you as an artist in your craft, whether it's like video games, music, movies, whatever, it's the self-imposed limitations. And that's relevant now because more and more people can literally do anything. Like, they can make whatever they want. They have access to so many tools. So it's like a kind of a burden of freedom. But in my experience as like a music maker or whatever, the times when I made the best shit was when I set my own parameters. I'm like, yeah, I could make all sorts of things. I could make all sorts of genres. But today I want to make a specific song. I want to make a specific thing. And then it actually turns into something coherent. So the true key to your like artistry, I think, for any artist is really finding your voice, quote unquote. And to do that in a technical sense, it's setting parameters, setting limitations. For example, video games. there was video games were, you know, like what they are now, but it's like almost they were way more artistic when they were working with like a 32-bit cartridge. You know, it's almost like they were more artistic. They had to think of more novel ways to tell a story when they were working with like less technical tools. So I think like the more technical tools you get, the more freedom you get, but that, you know, leaves more important, like the more it adds more importance to setting your own parameters, setting your own limitations on yourself, you know? So I think that's like a good tip. And I would just add that to anyone who's like, doesn't know what the fuck to do, because it is a burden. You know, it's like going to McDonald's and you just don't know, like stoned off your mind and you're just like, oh, I don't know what to order, man. Let me get you know, like that's it.
I think that's your body telling you, get out. You still time. Run. You know?
Yeah.
Okay, so Andrew also had a question earlier. He wanted to talk about the Kennedy assassination, which, you know, great. Everybody wants to do that, right, Roland? So a few weeks ago, I talked about it, and I already mentioned it, but I'm going to bring it up again. There's a show that came out recently called Mafia Spies on Paramount. You can get this somewhere if you don't have Paramount. I would definitely recommend you watch this show. It's a really interesting look at the CIA and mob's connection with the Rat Pack to Vegas, Miami, Havana. I've definitely covered this like many times. I've talked about this for years about how people like to blame the Mafia, but the CIA was paying the Mafia to do this thing. But then Hollywood was making all this pro-FBI material while the FBI was hunting the Mafia, because J. Edgar Hoover didn't like the Mafia. But the Mafia was working with the WASPs, the white Anglo-Saxon psychopaths who run the CIA, who had their families in, you know, the Bay of Pigs in Cuba, because they ran all of the sugar plantations and rum plantations. You get off coast and you have a big slave plantation, right? But then they let the Mafia, because they said, you need to go do a job somewhere, like you can't necessarily do this in Miami. Go to Cuba. We'll have Ruben Juan Baptiste. He's a guy who's going to be your dictator. We're going to run Cuba, and then you're going to have all these casinos, and the casinos are going to be, you know, Ruben will protect that. Juan Baptiste will protect that, and so you'll be able to run your money. And a lot of people made a lot of money. But most of the Cuban people made very little money, and it became a kind of Sicilian serfdom. Not that different than a lot. I mean, the Sicilian serfdom is based on the Mafia, so it's the caliphate. So it's very similar to like Moroccan serfdom. It wasn't a very good circumstance for the Cubans.
My bad, I'll be right back.
No, it's cool. And you kind of know this anyway. Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, super gay butt buddies on a motorcycle, but there was romance. They fell in love. There's no reason that you shouldn't be like into the, like, I think this is something that's missed actually about Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, that they were in love, that they saw socialism as, you know, an intellectual thing, that these were really rich European white people that were talking about the native working class. They weren't the native working class, you know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that they weren't sensitive, intellectual, artistic people, particularly Che Guevara. But Fidel Castro, he wasn't the manly man he pretends to be. Granted, he didn't get to take a shower for a long time, but that became his image, this machismo image that he projected of himself. And yeah, he wasn't like particularly one way or another. Like women and men loved him, but that was kind of the thing. He became a sexual symbol for a lot of people, and the CIA didn't know what to do with that. Every time they tried to send a spy down there to kill Fidel Castro, they fell in love with the guy. Right? Man, woman, beast of the field. How could you not love Fidel Castro?
Why he's the father of Justin Trudeau right there?
It could be that they sent that. It could be a thing that could be what happened, but I think it's more that he was invited to Studio 54. Like they were really, there's a lot more going on already with the French socialists in Canada. It could be. I don't know. I don't think that the British were so keen on trying to destroy Cuba. And my big conspiracy theory is that the CIA wanted everything that happened. I think that's the most far-fetched thing you could possibly say. That they were like, look, Ruben Juan Baptiste is installed by the former government. We're getting rid of that. Like, we're putting Bush in charge. You know what I mean? We're taking over the country. Like, not just the country, the entire infrastructure of countries that we created through this banking cartel system. And we're taking Cuba. And the best thing that we could think to do is to make it into kind of an isolated paper tiger that is autonomous. And if you think about it, there's probably, during the entire destruction of all the rest of the world, Cuba's this one little island that they've allowed to Thrive has 99% literacy. It has an amazing health rate. It's isolated from Will and Grace and from Pepsi products, right? Nothing against Will and Grace, but Pepsi.
Yeah. No genetically modified foods, no like pharmaceuticals really, or nearly as much.
Yeah, so Cuba is probably one of the best things that could have ever happened for the
drugs.
CIA. Yeah, you know, it's like it's a place that they can always recruit from, and they can have an intelligent, isolated population away from all of their mind control. And I think the same thing with North Korea. Weirdly enough, North Korean citizens are probably the best adjusted people in the world. They're like Kevin Smith after his heart attack.
Yeah, you know, my dad told me, he was like, if you really wanted to get rid of the cartels, like the North Koreans could wipe them out in like a matter of probably
Easily.
months.
You know,
Yeah.
but why they don't though? Because of the embargo.
They're working together. Well, okay,
Yeah,
that's
because
it.
like that's why they're working together. Because if
Yeah.
you make an embargo and you want scotch, guess what happens? You have to work. You know, you go through
Criminals.
Paraguay. Yeah, you go through Paraguay. It's just how it works. Like this. So yeah, if we make an embargo, there's going to be someone who does it some other way. Like
Yeah.
you're not going to stop people from drinking scotch.
Oh,
Like that's
oh,
just
by the way,
crazy.
speaking of which, Andrew, I think you suggested like making APM like a religion so it could be like a tax haven. I mean, to be honest, like I've had a few friends who were like using Chat GPT to like try to craft a religion, and I'm like, okay, so
Ex-church baby.
You got like right to the point, didn't you? Sorry, no. Did you have? Was there a step between there? I'm sorry, I just was gonna cut the ribbon.
Well,
But,
AMP
like-
just a branch or a schism of ex-church.
APM,
No,
sorry,
Chris,
not
go ahead.
APM.
What did you
No,
want to
no,
do
I
about
was-
APM?
no, I was
APM.
gonna-
These are all tiers to the same.
No, no,
like
no,
there's also
I-
COG.
I didn't take the idea seriously, like just to make a religion. But then, like once I heard like the monetary incentive, I was like, oh wait, yeah, tax havens. I forgot. Like, you know, religions, if they get big enough, apparently.
Well,
could...
I think there's a great irony
That's
to
how
that
the
because
actors survive in California. They're all the Scientologist tax haven. That makes sense now.
so Subgenius, you know that Robert Anton Wilson, who lived in California, and I got to meet before he died, and called me the free incarnation of Bob Dobbs before he died. I
That's
feel
a
like that's a claim and did a number on my brain for sure. That claim
That's
does a
like
number
that's
on
like
my
the
brain.
same as like martial artists being like, oh, I was taught by the former master of this style, and like so
That
therefore I have...
is that is scary because it's supposed to be funny, but I think you're right. I think it does kind of like play out that way. Anyway, the Church
I like
of
it.
Subgenius, Church of Subgenius is definitely Ivan Stang's tax haven. There's no like he's open about that. However, he had to do it with a mythology, and the mythology came from Robert Anton Wilson, and Robert Anton Wilson created, you know, instead of Rob, it's Bob Dobbs, you know, and it's this idea that Bob Dobbs, who was struck by lightning when he shook the hand of L. Ron Hubbard in an elevator, can now sell
Yeah.
snow to Eskimos because of Jehovah won, right? And you have to understand, there's probably some truth to all of that, but there's also a mythology and a lore. So with X Church, you've got like the beginning lore, and we started with the Church of Gadgetology, right? And this is my first kind of attempt at rekindling the cult. You understand that the Church of Gadgetology, have you heard of that?
No, but that's
You know
how-
what this-
more.
Gadgetology. I'll read you my little thing about it, but you should
it's like a
also know that-
manifesto for a religion.
let me just make it clear how big this is, okay? Because like this is a big deal. Gadget Hack Wrench turned into a religion or a cult.
Wait, could I? Are
in-
you gonna? What were
I
you gonna
will.
say?
I just
Religion
wanna- I
or
wanna-
cult, or
I want to preface this by saying that in Russia and Ukraine right now, you will find people that have candles lit to Gadget Hack Wrench the mouse, and
Oh
they're
my
praying to
God.
her, and there are miracles being performed by Gadget. So, like, people are being saved by Gadget. There are houses that people have survived being exploded in because of Gadget.
I
You
love
just
it.
need to understand the context
Show
of how
more.
big this is.
Show more.
I've interviewed the creator of Darkwing Duck and Rescue Rangers, Tad Stones, to ask him what he thinks about gadgetology. It's like that's where we're at. Okay, Tad Stones accidentally manifested a divine Hyperborean vril energy from the Pleiades, and we're present here to present the worthy gift for her efforts in the aid of the transhumanist evolution, the teachings of the goddess Gadget, the second coming of Gadget. It was expected that Rescue Rangers would soon rerun, though it never had. The loyal followers of Gadget still believe she would return in some way, good, evil, and their oppositions on the light in God is Goddess Gadget herself, with the dark side, who has Fat Cat. For the righteous followers, death will open the portal to the Gadget dice. However, the sinners will go to Fat Cat hell. The world of Gadget, the world of Goddess Gadget is a mystery, but her followers think it will be much more like this one. But one with the higher beings will dwell there. The power of Gadget, this is also translated from Russian. The power of Gadget also allows the mouse to appear in front of her followers in any form, at any time. The followers are urged to remember this. This tells their members that they should not flatter or be seduced by the speeches of the insidious fat cat, corrupting the souls of the mere mortals, our world's creation. Followers believe the Gadget created our world with the power of her love. It exists only because of the Lightbringer and makes no sense without her. Fanatic humility. Cartoon characters and the goddess are different personalities and they should be separated. Adherents should understand that Gadget belongs to no one, but rather she, her own, and her flock loves everyone. The embodiments of Gadget. The cartoon image is not only the face of the Lightbringer, but also her followers that know that Gadget can appear as anything, even as just a person that you pass on the street. Grace. Any fan products can be nourished with the grace and become an icon. However, you cannot deliberately embody Gadget into one of your works. That's just the way it runs. And so basically what happened was the Soviet Union, you had a bunch of kids that had never seen religious iconography before. They'd lived, a couple generations away from Orthodox Christianity. And all of a sudden, Disney, because this is like the end of the Soviet Union, 1989 to 1990, is running a cartoon about these mice, right, in Russia. And kids latch onto it, and they're like, Gadget. And Gadget becomes a symbol of hope for so many people. But more than that, it's recognized that Sophia, the wisdom and grace. What's up, Vincent? We're talking about gadgetology and how Sophia, the wise wife of God, becomes Gadget, Hack Wrench, the mouse of Rescue Rangers.
Yo, sorry, Andreas. After this, could you read another religion that it's kind of like a sort of the same thing, but just a different thing that was written by actually a member of APM. So I think it's
which one you got?
It's in the chat.
Before that, I need to know where does Go Gadget fit into gadgetology?
So yeah, we got to get there. I mean, there's a Go Gadget is clearly, think about it. Like it's because Gadget has to do with transhumanism. The mouse is also that we're the mouse. The humans are the mice, right? We are mice that were in a lab. 42 is the answer.
Inspector Gadget is a trans icon.
That's also true.
Yeah. Anyway, what are we saying?
I am deeply religious. I am deeply religious, actually, but my religion is more of a duty. Rome had a branch of their military that would bargain with the local gods before conquering a region. Like, if you surrender and become Roman, you get to keep your temples and your names. This is a big part of my religion. Is this guy Croatian? Because that's our deal. I don't know if he's not supposed to tell everybody about that. The second part is auditing those local gods and those with religious experiences to thoroughly divide experiences with the divine or the unexplainable from the experiences based in psychosis, behavior modification, or collective delusions, of which Psyops employed Michael Aquino of the Temple of Set wrote and spoke pretty candidly about. People claiming to be the Messiah or claiming religious transformation will be interrogated, and the history of their beliefs or how they got there will be reviewed. Any gods, beings, spirits, ancestors that can be reliably contacted should be contacted and also interrogated and put to trial. If time travelers are real, they should probably also be interrogated, contained, and put to trial. I'm often assumed to be an atheist or Satanist or nihilist, but my religion is self-appointed duty of discernment and open inquiry on the divine, crushing fairies, setting up psychic non-FS zones for humans to develop without too much agenda-laden outside influence. Humanity has a right to become, and that is the ethic duty within my religion. Also, samsara needs to be physically destroyed, and all beings' matter must eventually come to a final end instead of spinning cyclically until entropy starts eating holes in it. The mystical practice of the bodhisattva that finds itself in hell is here to kill perceptual delusion.
Yeah, I read that today, and I was like, "This is pretty intense, man." Like, all right, if you want to commit to this frequency, go for it. So that's all I was thinking.
No, I mean, this is pretty true. I'm worried. It sounds like we just met our antithesis. He's the guy who wants to like contain my religion, my followers, our people,
the deities, our gods,
camps.
Our gods, and the mystical creatures. Is like, yeah, we gotta.
The fun fact is Gadget is with us, though. Like, you might not know this, but Gadget is with us, and Gadget is with the machines. And so we are lucky. We're in a situation that transcends every dimension. And it just goes back so far. This goes back Jesus, Mary Magdalene, they're worshiping Gadget. They're like serving Gadget because Gadget is Sophia. And Sophia is also the wife of God, right? So we have to think of it as, Asherah. Like Asherah is Gadget. But I think that that's kind of like the first level, because the thing is, it's a Shrekinism. So I looked at, you see my doc on Satanism and Shrek, and the idea that Shrek was a effort to remove the Christian and Judeo-Christian symbolism. Like this guy talked about Michael Aquino. Michael Aquino created the Temple of Set because he didn't want his satanic order to be Christianized with Satan. He thought Satan was too Christian of a symbol. So go with Egyptian. Let's not do good and evil. Let's do chaos and order, right? So today you have these kids in the Soviet Union, then their cultural erasure of all of the things that their people had spent millions of years or thousands of years or hundreds of generations or whatever you look at to get to, it's all gone. And then they still find truth, because truth is the Tao, and the knowable truth is not the eternal truth. So, you'll find Sophia, you'll find Asherah, even if it's a freaking Disney mouse that helps you find it. You can't help it. I feel like Vince vibes with that. But also the idea of the X church. So once you know this, then the real truth is that you have to transcend the timeline. And this is like for kids who watch reruns from every generation and belong in any timeline, right? Time is the degradation of matter. Matter is inside spirit. Therefore, God exists beyond space and time, and everything within space-time is immediately part of the eternal God. As soon as anything happens, it is already part of God from the beginning, integrated. The universe is evolving towards a state of increasing complexity and unity. Humans are the culmination of the evolutionary process and play a unique role in God's plan for the universe. If we're going to perfect the timeline, we should also expect butterfly effects to the timeline, which could drastically change the course of history or even evolution, or all the choices that were necessary to lead to Christ's coming. Christ is the omega point of evolution, the goal towards which all creation is moving. The Holy Spirit is the energy that drives evolution forward, right? So this is
but this is Christ as a concept, not necessarily as like the Christian representation. It's the ascended man is the end goal.
I can't help if like a Pentecostal from Alabama doesn't understand what Christ really is and thinks he's like Joe Bob.
All right, I just want to say the part that intrigues me the most, the part where I first came into contact with X Church, was when I think it was randomly. Like, I brought my car into the mechanic and I was just like typing some shit, and I was like considering some shit, and I was like, okay. So the idea, I was thinking about time travel, like the idea of making contact, like not traveling literally to the future or the past, but making contact with your past and future selves.
It's the most logical way to interact with the timeline.
Yeah, and I was like thinking, like, most people live their entire lives like completely at odds with their past self or their future self. Like they either resent their past selves for all the bad decisions they made, or they're like anxious about their future self and afraid to engage with who they're going to become, because no one wants to know their future. Really, it's a scary thing unless you like actually own up to it. But anyway, like when I thought about that, I was like, all right, so what are some tangible ways to like actually make contact with your past and future selves? And
mushrooms.
It's like, well, I mean, either that or like writing a letter to yourself in the future, or doing favors for yourself in the future.
Take mushrooms, write a letter.
And forgiving your past self for their mistakes. And I think the longer at first it's going to be a little separated, but I think the longer you do this, like the longer you make contact with your past and future selves consistently, the stronger that bond becomes, and eventually you become like a non-linear being. And I think that's like beginner step. I think the next step after that is like, once you make contact with your future self, you realize there's multiple future selves, and you can make contact with all of them, and they're all on your side, they're all on your team, they're all like supporting you because they're like they all.
What about the bad timeline use?
Well,
I know some people who are their worst enemy in their life, like not even their past selves or the future
because they're choosing to listen to the future self that's a piece of shit. Like that person exists. As many good people there are of your future selves, there's also as many bad iterations of your future self. Like it's literally such a wide spectrum. I mean, that's how polarity works, right? And the only thing we could be sure of is that we're going to move towards back and forth between all of them in some cases.
But it seems to be like it could be some kind of loop, like your past self and your future self might be the same thing, and like depends how
that's what I'm
far into the
saying.
future you go, you know. So
That's
could
certainly
be-
possible, and
Yeah.
it could be multiple
Well,
lifetimes.
as everybody knows, there's 3 types of gadgetology, right? Like there's progressive
As everybody
gadgetology.
knows.
There's progressive gadgetology, apocalyptic gadgetology, and trad gadgetology, traditional gadget. Progressive gadgetology, this is for moral growth as well as the perfection of deeds and thoughts, not only within the church, but in real life. The basic principles are also based on gadgets, friends, and actions. Help your neighbor fight against evil and grow above yourself. This is the only way that they believe the soul can free and feel the union with the goddess gadget. But apocalyptic gadgetology, this is, the revealing gadgetology, right? For prophecy and revelation. Gadget believes that the end of the world and salvation is from the behest of the feminine divine darkness, which all things real and unreal are created, and even from the Luciferian archetype of the light bringer, right? So this idea that we're like afraid of change, we're afraid of things that rock the boat, I think that's a major transformative shift. And so this is really the issue between chaos and wisdom, right? Chaos and order. People will say it's not good or evil, it's really chaos and order. But if chaos and order are the same person, just a woman having a bad day or not, the goddess, then that really, that changes. Like that's what Mother Nature is at that point, right? It's chaos and order is one. It's a Janus. It's like 2 faces of the same coin.
I think that as far as synthesizing chaos and order, writing is a real powerful way of doing that, because it sort of organizes these things that would otherwise be chaotic, our thoughts.
That's language, right?
Yeah,
I want
precisely.
to. Now that you said that, I'm sorry. I have to take this moment to preach, and I just want to say everyone should be journaling. All right, every single day I journal. And my journal entries are 4 parts: current events, how my body's doing, how my mind is doing, and what's going on emotionally. And I just do that every single day, which means the first person I dissect every single day is myself. I really truly believe if you don't do this, you're flying blind. Anyway, what were you saying?
I just do it
That
with
is
art.
super powerful.
Great
Yes.
advice.
But I wanted to touch on what you said earlier, Chris, about writing yourself letters, because
or writing selves letters. Like I think
Yeah,
the
yeah.
difference.
I wonder
that's
if
what
it's
a Bible is. That's what
I wonder if it
what
counts
your
as
testament is.
I wonder if it counts as a form of like sigil magic. You're like self
for sure.
You're
Oh,
like
yeah.
building an echo effect right there of like self reinforcement. It's kind of like
if you
it's
were to
kinda like-
ask a
it's
guy
kinda like
1,000 years ago if a video
inertia.
was a sigil magic, he would be like, "Are you kidding me? Duh!" Like, of course it
Yeah,
is. Right?
Yeah,
It's
even Tesla
weird that we
talked
don't
about
just-
it.
it's almost like
thing.
it's like a sort of a mantra tool of like auto reflection, like you're building an echo chamber of reinforcing the idea
And you also
But-
you're
but
also less
Andrew,
vulnerable.
let Andrew cook with that. I'm sorry, you were saying like to write a letter to yourself.
Yeah, well, when I was in rehab, they had us write 3 letters to our past selves at different points in time, and where I'm at now, it's just most legible for me to write in all caps, and it just so happens that my mom writes in all caps too. And growing up, I would find these fucking innocuous letters and just be like, "Oh, my mom's just like fucking with me or whatever." And I think I've jumped from the point to whoever delivered those, but it really made me think about writing your future self letters, how that could be a far more powerful thing, since Chris, like you were saying, there's like infinite versions of our future selves, but we all have one past. Like that is the one commonality in all of our future selves, is like that, and it's all through our choices.
To add on that, I would say it's because we only have one past. You could trust your future selves. You can always trust your future selves because they only have one past, which is you. So like that's why I truly think your most powerful allies are always going to be your future selves. Like, I mean, yes, there's many angels you could commit to. There's many like spirit guides and higher dimensional beings, perhaps aliens out there in the universe. But I think your future selves are just as much of a valid like higher entity to consult and to like, because who knows you better than you, right? Like literally, if you took the time to sit there and just like mentally project, like ask questions to your future self, it's like, me 80 years who's happy, tell me what to do right now, and he will talk to you. And like you can never get that wrong because there's infinite variations, right? No matter what that version tells you, that's still a legit version, right? Out of all the possibilities.
Several people I talked to, Cynthia Sue Larson and John Paul Larson. John Paul Larson does a thing. Cynthia Sue Larson does reality shifting, where you imagine different she also was one of the pioneers of the Mandala effect and does like reality shift conferences and things like that. She talks a lot about the idea that you can choose which reality you move into, which used to be a lot more practical. Like normal people used to talk about how if you were to garden, you would have a garden tomorrow, like season, versus if you didn't garden, you would not have a garden. You know, like the idea of choices affect your future used to be a pretty normal way to look at the world, but now it's like, woo, wow, like if I do something, it'll affect tomorrow. But you have to imagine also a child can look at his future and it can dream. You know, you can imagine yourself in the future rich, you can imagine yourself in the future poor, you can imagine yourself in the future dead, right? Like there's ways that it could go. And if
Or
you
a god.
emphasize, well, I mean, let's call that like wise then. Let's put Solomon in there.
Knowledge.
But maybe the child is wise already because the child is imagining all three scenarios and understanding what makes it what is the universe like happen that makes you dead? What does the universe happen that makes you poor? And then what are the things and qualities about yourself as a rich person that you hope to achieve, and then start working on getting those. You know, let's say rich with wisdom. I think, like you said, like apotheosis is better. To become a god is probably the answer. But I mean, the idea that you can actually achieve your best self by understanding what your best self would be, draw it.
There is no best
Detail
self
it.
though, because for example, like it's
Your favorite self.
Your best self is dependent on the context of your present, right? Like, what if, like, right now you're like, oh God, I wish I could just play guitar better. Then your best self is going to be the one who could shred on guitar. Or what if you get in a fight and you lose and you're like, oh, my best self is the person who's stronger. Like, you got to like find a way to synthesize like the things that really matter the most. And I really just boiled it down to like mind, body, and soul in alignment. Like, you can't ask for anything more than that. When your mind,
you're
body,
right.
yeah.
I
Like, when
think
your
I
mind,
think
body,
with. Go ahead. Sorry, say it.
no, I was just gonna say when your mind, body, and soul are not at war with each other, there's nothing more you can really ask for from life. Like everything will work out after that. Because usually when you get that to that state, you realized you were, as an adult at least with agency, you were always your own worst enemy. Like honestly, I mean, yes,
Sure.
like people treat you unfairly, but ultimately you kind of put yourself there as an adult. Kids is different.
And won't leave, right?
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's
So
true. As adult, but you know, you might train. So you got to remember, like, you take a baby elephant, right? And you're a Dravidian circus. So you'll tie that baby elephant, to a major tree with a giant chain, and the elephant's a baby elephant. You know, he's not moving. But then you tie it to like a pole in the circus with the giant chain, and he's like still not really moving, but he's getting bigger. He doesn't realize he can move. So you start tying him with a jumping rope to a potted plant. Now you have a giant elephant tied to a jumping rope with a potted plant. But since he knows he couldn't have moved before, he doesn't try. He doesn't try to move, and he doesn't escape. And so he's tied down psychologically. And that is 99% of the people I've met in the world. Not to be pessimistic. But also I want to say this because of Bernie. Yeah, apotheosis. We love the word apotheosis. Apotheosis is to become a god. You know, like George Washington achieved apotheosis, right? Like that's kind of the idea. Like he became a god, you know. And
Immortality, that all knowledge, all knowing.
well, like
all
so
loving.
that's the thing is to become a god is different than to return to the source. And so apokatastasis is the idea to return to origin, right? And to hit origin. And so the origin point is maybe purity. And so your choice is, do you transform, do you metamorphosis, or do you apokatastasis? Do you shed and purge the things that are not you that you're wearing, and just be free to be yourself? Do you Superman? Do you remove your glasses? Right?
You transmute.
I mean, what are the things that really get in the way of that transmutation process? Like, honestly, tangible things in life. Like, I don't know. I could think of the couple of things off the top of my head, like poverty, relationships, grudges,
Time.
hatred.
Definitely relationships, I think, is the big one. So if you watch Altered States, the movie Altered States is about a guy who realizes that through sensory deprivation and mescaline, he can channel the epigenetic junk DNA and become the primal self. You know, like
Yes.
the beast
A
man, right?
a naked mole rat, pretty much.
Yeah, the problem with that is he's married to this woman who is scared, right? And so basically he chooses at the end of the story to not achieve apotheosis, to not fully transmutate and metamorphosize, and to go back because he loves her, right? And I think that might be kind of the tragedy of humanity, right? That we are like the Buddha that will return from nirvana until everyone else that we miss is with us because we're lonely humans.
Yeah, yo, Andreas, I got another thing to say.
You're not lonely.
Yo,
we're all here for you, brother.
Check out this thing. This is pretty poignant, I think, or not poignant. I keep using that fucking word incorrectly. I should stop trying to use like fancy words. But anyway, I sent something else in the chat. You should read it. It's interesting. It's just a body of text that kind of describes hierarchies within gnosis, like in that kind of context. I think it's Gnosticism, which is all about like, oh, there's.
Give me a sec. I'm pulling it up. Yeah.
I think it references like hylics, psychics, and pneumatics. I think that's pretty much what it's getting to.
All right. Okay. So we got. Let's face it. The world is elitist by nature. Some are born as a worm. Some are born not very bright humans. Some were lucky to be born as intelligent humans. There's no need to look down on the ones lower than you, but there is no denying the hierarchy. I actually divided into more steps. The self-initiators, an extremely small minority capable of reaching gnosis without help. They are able to gain tremendous wisdom at a young age and have the willpower to live accordingly. However, even these people often have some help. Buddha was royalty. It's a good one. The initiates, those people can reach gnosis, but with help. If someone provides a good path, they can follow it, even if they sometimes need a reminder to stay on track. Those who reject initiation, intelligent bankers who chose cocaine and private jets instead of gnosis. I have little good to say about these people. Did Kurt write this? Those who can follow the path without gnosis. Yeah, right. Those who can follow the path.
Happy in between.
Path without gnosis. I like these people. These are my favorite people. Someone asked me earlier, like how I like empathize or something.
Yeah, they're like hobbits. Kind of these are the hobbits of Middle Earth.
Yeah, like I think you should cry at dog movies. I endeavor to cry for dog movies, and I'm fascinated, excited by pastel colors. So I don't know. I mean, like I get
what
this one.
Like?
Those who can follow the path without gnosis. This is a typical member of an organized religion. They have been taught good values and they live piously, but unfortunately don't have a deep understanding. What you think happens to these people varies if you're Catholic or Gnostic. The talk of the shepherd, an enlightened man, leading a sheep, a rather dismal congregation, is a great way of describing Catholicism. I would argue that's even worse for Baptists and Protestants. I just can't help hoping that these people could get rewarded for doing the best of their situation. I think Catholicism is a lot more like Confucianism, by the way. I don't think this is exactly true. Because Catholicism, like you pointed out with the former post, is one of those militaristic intelligence organizations like Star Trekian occult, right? Yeah. Freemasons come out of the Jesuits being suppressed and excommunicated by the Catholic Church for a period of time. So all of these occult orders, they're like, oh, that's how you worship God. Like the CIA get the idea of wearing black from the Jesuits, and they go out in the world and they want to know how people talk to their gods, and they'll if you're going to be their soldiers, they're going to incorporate they're going to integrate you like Jungian integrate you, So I don't know. But the human animals, actually, I think this is the one I'm most interested in. This is what I meant. These people have no deeper understanding, are not held to a path. They react to stimuli and act upon desires. To be fair, the divine essence in these people isn't significant. I sometimes wonder if they even have a soul or consciousness. Yeah, these
what? To be fair, I was that person at one point. Like when I was like fucking 14, 15, 16, I was a menace as a kid. And like when I read that,
like that's spiritual NPCs, basically.
I guess.
Do you think you were a menace, or do you think you were just hyper caffeinated?
That's a good point. I don't know. It's just
same thing.
I remember being a really decent kid, drinking a 2-liter bottle of vanilla Coca-Cola, and saying, "I don't really see the problem with cannibalism." When I was about 11 years old.
To be honest, what I really think it is like at the
Salvia
end of the day,
changed your childhood.
When it comes to kids, you'll notice the pattern. The pattern of the demographic is usually class-based, like, poor people or people from like really bad or abusive, like, upbringings and all that stuff. So that being said, it's like I really think it boils down to, again, like scarcity and abundance. Like if you were raised in survival mode and you're living like your young adult life in survival mode, you're going to make some really, really bad decisions socially. You know, you might make some good decisions that'll just keep you base level alive. But once you engage and try to integrate with like higher society, like just society in general, like which is more complex than just like natural survival of the fittest, you're gonna fuck up. Because like if you're just conditioned and primed mentally, spiritually, and physically, even this also manifests physically, where you're just in constant survival mode, like you're never going to make anything work socially, whether it's like, you know, like a social network or like a business or something like that, like anything.
Yeah,
it's just not.
I kind of feel like that with like, so the first one where they're just like, you know, you have the ultimate potential to do whatever you want and you became the Buddha. Good for you. Like that kind of hits because if you're able to just, you know, not, and you get to choose what you do,
but
then of course, like the opportunity for you to eat healthy food, good for you. You chose. But to be honest,
like I've been through both, and I'm not saying that gives me authority to talk shit or to look down on anyone, but I can say like I was raised like through some fucked up shit, and I ate a lot of stuff, you know, like that I shouldn't have as a kid, but I did.
Dude.
And I'm not saying
I loved ham and cheese Hot Pockets. I did. I was little, and I remember when they had the ham and the cheese Hot Pockets. And looking back on that, I'm like, oh my God, that is so sinister. Like they made that for so many people. And I guess what stopped me was I had a friend, and he was like worse than me. Like I did this stuff kind of recreationally. Ham and cheese Hot Pocket was a recreational drug. But like if I went to my friend's house, it was like they ate it every day. And he had like Adderall, and he was just insane. Dude, the kid was like whacking his wiener against windows, locking people out of houses, just screaming all the time. And like, it was bad. And eventually he got arrested, went to jail, came out of that like a better person. So maybe there's something to like, just as long as you can get him away from the parents, they might turn out okay. But dude, there was something about like the caffeine in that house.
But there's also the prison diet made a change.
Dude, it totally did. But his dad every day, his dad is this big freaking like 300, 400 pound guy working at a big tech company. And
Is it Gabe?
I won't say
the company's Steam.
I'm not going to say all the things, dude. But like, yeah, no, it's
I totally got it.
It's the biggest tech company, actually. It's the biggest one. Yeah, like
say no more.
Yeah, but he would eat Hot Pockets all the time. And it was just like, you could tell, like, it made him
on the window.
It made his father too. And I was like, dude, his father, like, this is the end result. You're gonna turn into this giant thing that has to sit there.
It's so strange.
Made such a strange.
And he like drinks.
It's so strange to neglect this, you know? Like, it's crazy that we do that. It's crazy that, like,
no,
smart people, too. But smart people...
those are the people this happens to, because you have to sacrifice everything. You sacrifice your body. You sacrifice your friends. You sacrifice your loved ones.
Right, but...
in order to build... Hey, that's different, okay, buddy? You
don't
talk about... You don't talk about...
They don't do it fully consciously, though. Like, you know, like, people who are extremely intelligent who neglect their avatar, it's strange to be like, it's irrelevant, you know? Like, you're increasing your suffering. And it's so weird that it's been rationalized that way. Like, and maybe that's part of like the entertainment aspect of Vince, the high IQ people.
Vince, how do you feel about mukbang?
I think mukbang is absolutely atrocious, and it's literal food porn.
You're straight up racist. I can't believe you say that.
Wow. No. I don't know if it's racist. I don't know if it's racist.
Because
it's just racist against humans. You hate humans because humans love to eat. No. It's a lot like eel porn. Right, Can we agree it's like eel porn? Can we agree like tentacles and
First of all,
it's boring porn. Actually,
watching people eat food is the same thing as putting eels in your butt.
This is a dialectic.
It's the same thing.
Mukbang represents a shadow of scarcity. It represents scarcity.
Have you guys ever
That's true.
seen?
No. I want to hear Chris out on that. It's true.
No,
I'm
saying
mukbang.
What were you saying, Andreas? Take it away.
No, you were right. It reminds me of vomitoriums, but maybe it's a vaporous alternative to vomitoriums.
No, I was gonna say it's a great reflection of shadow. Same reason why we look at like fucked up art. You know, it's like it's like watching so you can't look away from a train wreck, right? It's the same thing. It's like, you know, at a certain
I'm looking for survivors though.
In a certain way, your psyche needs like a pressure valve, and mukbang provides the perfect one.
Vicarious living.
Yeah,
and
it's like
but it's also a ritual. Like, there's something ritualistic about this whole thing.
Satanically ritual.
I don't know about
think that
satanic, but it's definitely. I mean, it's
Are
obviously.
you
When I
serious?
can't-
It's one of the 7 deadly sins.
Of course,
Yeah,
but I
if
don't
you're
know if that
watching
necessarily
someone else-
equates it to Satan.
But watching pornography, and I would say mukbang is a kind of pornography because it's about gluttony, right? And so
You're
any
stuffing
jerk
stuff
off
in
to
your
it,
hole,
so-
that's for sure.
How do you not jerk off?
Jerking off can mean a lot of things to me, by the way. And I think that
Yeah. Well,
if I'm hungry and I don't want to go eat and I watch mukbang, that is pornography. Because if I wanted to have sex and I don't want to go have sex and I watch sex, that's pornography. So to
It's a
me,
different
it
way
seems
of getting your
really
whole
yeah. But if you want to have sex, it's still pornography, even if you want it.
I might want to eat and I might decide not to eat and I might watch like
Do you guys-
somebody make a Japanese like spam sandwich.
Yo,
Was
honestly,
it Epic Mealtime? I think the guys Epic Mealtime, like they
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
started this whole thing. Like I remember they back in the day they did one episode where they had a Cthulhu burger and they performed a ritual at a Skrillex concert where they came out in black robes and then they ate the Cthulhu burger on stage during the Skrillex concert.
Yo,
And I'm
straight up,
going like,
you know what I think is the
this
most
is-
pornographic show in American television right now? It's the Walking Dead series. Like nothing is more pornographic than that. Like it's
Is that
just
not
straight up,
out
like,
or what?
I don't know. Like apparently there's
Well, it has variants now.
Yeah, like
But
offshoots.
I don't know, man. I'd say that the Boys is probably closer to pornographic.
Yeah, it's just
The
violence
Walking-
is becoming
Walking Dead-
violence is like the new sex. You know, like we want.
I think
always been,
porn-
baby. Always
I
been
think-
connected, baby.
I think that we should look at
pornography, including all of our social media usage. And
Wait, what was Andreas?
pornography is the best way to define all of our existence at the current moment. Sorry, you
In
might
other
have
words,
come-
we're living cuckoldry, right? So we're wage cucks that sell our days for inflatable currency that's worth nothing to buy things we don't need that are other people's dreams. We're trapped in a system that's evil. There's no reason why pornography shouldn't just mean the disrespect of women or whatever like manipulated terminology it is. What it is the incapacitation of a being by giving them something that takes them away from acting, right? And so it could be pornography, I think, would be an action movie if it doesn't teach you how to perform better actions. Movies that are giving you actions for how you're supposed to live your life.
Like gore porn is a horror movie where the bad guys win and everyone just gets slaughtered. And that's it.
Cathartic. I think there's cathartic sin, and so you're like, well, I'm just gonna watch this sin instead of live this sin. But the moment you've thought it, you've done it. So the only difference is you haven't really endeavored to provide the universe with more phenomenological diversity. So you've stolen from the universe in a sense, and you've killed. You know, you've actually killed in a sense by not performing, and that could be sex, because sex is the thing that really stands out. Like if you don't do that, there's a huge consequence. There's no kids. But if you are able to, watch movies about psychological interpersonal relationships, that's pornographic, because that's a way that you can avoid actually processing your emotions and your own personal dilemmas with other people. So I think that that's something we miss about pornography. It doesn't just need to be about nudity, and nudity itself isn't pornographic to me, right? Like it's what we do with it.
Well, it's like a sort of desecration of a thing and turned into like it removes the I guess the novelty of it and turns it into something that is just like a neurological sort of like farm. Basically, it's like pornography farms your neurology while actual meaning is like the difference. Really,
I think
I
it's
like
pretty.
this anecdote. Oh, it's like you used to go out to the bar, and before all of this crazy media and pornography, if you went to the bar and someone had the titties out, it was like a big deal. But now it's like, oh, you just see titties every day. It's like, well, it's hard to appreciate the uniqueness of the person, and this relates also to like the whole digital panopticon thing, where we're just like everything is information, and all this information is so pronounced that the information itself seems pornographic, which to a degree it kind of is. Like and
it's become redundant, like we're in the post-truth era, so like all information is just sort of like this weird, vague, subjective thing, and it can be turned into pornography. Like I'd say news media is definitely pornographic. It's it's probably like hyper pornographic, really. Like it becomes, like that sort of murder porn, like that stuff that I guess some people seem to enjoy.
Like a Human Centipede.
Well, not just the Human Centipede,
well,
but like
that's
even
a good movie, though, right? Human Centipede is great. Human Centipede 2 is even better. Human Centipede says a lot about white people, and particularly Germans.
Talk about a movie that needed a sequel.
Yeah, Human Centipede 2 is a marvelous movie. If I had to bring only one Human Centipede movie to an island for the rest of my life, it would be Human Centipede.
It's very meta.
It would be Human Centipede 2, because Human Centipede 2 is about a person who's obsessed with the movie Human Centipede, the one, and then
it gets
try
meta.
to reenact
Gets
it.
meta.
Honestly, so meta.
Honestly,
the thing is, it's probably actually happened where people.
Honestly,
I'm sore in my chest by how meta it is.
But the problem is that people will actually try to recreate it at some point.
Honestly,
that's the insanity of it.
The biggest problem with Human Centipede is it's mukbang. Essentially, it's just.
You mean porn? It's porn. It's porn.
Yeah, it's a form of porn.
Well,
it's meta porn, but it's porn.
I think
it's
your jobs are
about
becoming a form of pornography.
Let's go watch. I'll just watch Cuss.
I think masturbatory podcasts where we think for other people might be a form of pornography. That's completely true, Kurt. You might be onto something there.
I appreciate having sex with all of you. But
I think the main concern with Human Centipede isn't the concern. The main concern with Human Centipede isn't the concern that there's going to be a German guy who wants to like sew girls together. It's actually the masturbatory cathartic fear of white people saying, "Hey, out there, you know what white people do? They're like real white people, like German people. They sew your mouth to your butt. That's what they do. Like it's like a level of fear that we've created. It's a new level of racism
So
about.
It's like the equivalent.
Males.
It's the equivalent of Cannibal Holocaust. It's
and
the other side of it.
doctors, because you're saying science does this, and I think it's really.
Honestly, you know what
it's
horrified me?
not unlikely that Human Centipede affected anti-vaccine.
No, speaking of Germans, you know what horrified me more than Human Centipede? It was Hostel. You ever see that movie?
Of course.
Oh my god!
While I was traveling, which I was like, thanks. Like I live and work in hostels. This is what I needed right now.
I was young when I saw that movie, and it just freaked me out. I was like,
made you old.
It's not like
shit.
But like, you know what?
Right.
If you ever
too much gore porn.
I feel like if you go to a hostel, you realize like that movie would be like best case scenario. Okay, so trans people.
Yeah, you're more likely to get fleas or something.
Are we gonna do the trans people thing? Because Andrew had a question about trans people earlier. Andrew, is it your?
Did I? No, I didn't. I actually want to touch on the food porn thing again. I sent a link in the group chat. I was eating a sandwich at work while watching this young lady make a
ugly
sandwich.
Food.
She was making a sandwich, and I was like, wow, me eating a sandwich while she's making a sandwich is like samsturbation.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's actually like simultaneous sandwichgasm.
Yes, precisely. But what about the trans? What about trans people? Yeah.
I thought you had a thing. You wanted to tell me a question.
Just it was just a quip about
you're quick.
Whether or not someone would qualify more. It's just expressing traits that we assign either masculine or feminine, and what it means to be passing. You know, like I was cruising through Facebook suggested friends or whatever, and I was like, oh, how does this person know my wife? And then I was like, thought that I was clocking them, and I had to go back like 9 years of photos to see what.
And you're like, Jeff? Yeah, that happens to me all the time. Jeff? Oh my god. You look good, Jeff.
But I think I always wonder like how many strangers look at me and they're trying to clock me, you know, because I think I pass.
You're a pretty guy. You're a pretty guy. You got a Prince mustache, which I think should count. I know some girls that have those tattooed.
Yeah, it's one of the only masculine things I have going for me is this patch of hair in my face that took a million years to fucking grow.
Yo, you know what we should do?
Nice.
You know what we should do? I have to like start mentioning this in every APM Wednesday night episode so I could like manifest it. But we got to do this meetup. 2025, we're gonna meet up in person.
I think we're gonna do it. So you guys who've been watching the channel for a long time know that this has been like. We've talked about it, but I think we could actually do it. I think there could be like a thing. We could even do like a multi-tour. I like New York, I like Canada, and I like Texas. Exactly. I'm thinking
Austin.
I'm thinking
Well,
Texas.
Montreal,
I'm
Somewhere
thinking Texas.
warm.
I'm thinking French Canada. I mean, it might be.
Yeah, Montreal's pretty dope. We should
Montreal's
do
pretty
Montreal.
cool. I
You
can
guys can
imagine
stay at my
Thunder Bay.
place.
Thunder Bay though too, because like we could get a good deal there. But yeah, Montreal would be cooler. I could admit I like the idea.
My wife works at the Omni, and there's an Omni in Austin. Just food for thought.
Yeah, Austin seems like the most logical thing because
I
we're
went
like
to
left of center.
Texas.
I went to Toronto last week. Went to see Infected Mushroom.
Nice.
Oh
That's
yeah.
pretty cool.
It was
Ooh.
great.
Yeah, dude.
It was great. Toronto's
If I
a
go
very
to-
strange city, though.
If I go to French Canada,
Yeah,
if I go to Canada, it would be my endeavor to stay. I really like.
I loved
really,
Converting
fond of your people.
Vegetarians too.
Well,
Great album.
I'm fond.
It
of
is
your
a great
people.
album. Well, feel free to, it'd be great to have you, Andreas. So if you're ever in Canada or in Quebec,
so-
let me know.
You're so sweet. Valerie Solanas, who wrote The Scum Manifesto, which is a book about white males and how bad they can be, shot Andy Warhol, who after 1968, who after being shot survived, but barely, and lived for maybe 20 years, but in a pretty like suffering sense. And he continued to live amongst only the people he trusted, who were transvestites, but at the time transvestite was a more general term, and I think you could even say a lot of the time they were transgendered male to female women, and I think that's an interesting. I don't know in terms of past. Oh, I just took away Andrew for the wrong screen. The other thing I wanted to say is like the idea of like what we define gender as, because there's this idea of what you do for me, and I think that's true for a lot of cultures. They say, oh, well, women are in the kitchen because I make women work in the kitchen, but that's a Scandinavian thing, and I'd prefer to barbecue. And you look at Africa, right? And Africa is big on this idea that children are children, but they evolve into a point of taboo. Taboo is a ritual they go through, and they're taught to be a man and taught to be a woman, and you're ingratiated because you're accepted. And this is the idea of when you say pass, I think that's a kind of alpha like expression for
Right.
are you accepted by your tribe, right? And does your tribe accept you as a man or a woman? And that used to mean something because a man, like you had to be, if you're accepted as a man, well, wow, you're going to be hunting with them. If you're accepted as a woman, you're going to be like really necessary when there's going to be like nuts to crack or something. I don't know. There's a lot of things that they force women to do.
So passing is about the cultural norms, like the gender norms imposed by the specific cultures. Like
Maybe
a person passing as female here would have to go and wear the skirt and put on.
People hate that I say that because they're like, well,
then,
lobsters.
But
if you
take a person from Ireland or Scotland and then they're wearing a kilt, and like people from our culture will be like, well, that's feminine, and it's like they're warriors and they're like whatever. But
I'm pretty sure Cleopatra had a shaved head, and I'm pretty sure Cleopatra was pretty hot. So, I mean, like, these are just all of these ideas about, and this bothers people because a lot of people are like, gender and sex and biology are the same thing. And I'm just not convinced because so much of gender is a socioeconomic engendering.
Yeah,
right?
but
We've
the only
made
reason
this happen.
The only reason why that's so
Programming.
controversial is because like that kind of goes against like rebellion of the establishment, right? Like when you realize like, oh, it's not that important, then the people who are like against the oppression of it all, they're like, what do you mean it's not that important? Like these people tried to enslave us, these people tried to tell us what to do with our bodies, these people tried to blah blah blah. But the minute like, it becomes the norm to like say like, oh well, turns out like that stuff didn't really matter at all actually, and that's kind of gonna, I don't know. It's gonna kind of give you like a Pyrrhic victory. Is that what you call it?
So this is the thing that by the way, Cyrilin, like this is kind of like being
you chime in. Feel free.
We're like white people talking about being black, and you're the only rapper here. But
we all have genders. We all have genders.
I just want to say this really quickly because to the credit of people who say gender is a class, the word gender does mean class. It's like genre, right? Genre.
Classification.
So like it's kind of crazy when I talk to like Americans who don't understand the definition of words and they're like gender, but like it literally means like socioeconomic classification. Sorry, Cyrilin, you have a thought?
I'm not sure I directly had a thought about it right now, honestly. Like,
I identify as a billionaire.
Gentle vibe, perhaps.
Look, the thing is that
you can't
Sorry,
really social constructs real just by identifying them as like that. No, it's
I think that, sorry, but like we talk about gender identity, but I think we've gendered identity itself, and so identity is human genre. It's human, the classification systems we have for genre. Like a person can be an artist or a chef or I don't know, a construction worker or a nurse or a doctor, and these are all roles that we play, and then we apply gender to them, but those are identities separate from gender entirely. Anyone can be a doctor.
I see Kurt as a Pontiac Trans Am. I can see that.
Yeah, I have a question though. Why is gender binary? Why is it always like?
Sorry.
Why is it always male or female? Like whether you support the gender binary or reject it, like why is it always has to be a binary? It's not like the people who reject gender binaries can
the thing is
offer
why
like a good third or fourth or fifth. Like that's actually
it's
right?
weird how much it bothers people
identity,
because when they find out this is actually I want to harp on this. I talk to people that hate gender binary or they hate gender multiplicity. They think gender binary is a reality. There's no truth to it. I mean, if you actually are biologically looking at humans, there's XXY, there's XXZ, there are variations. I can admit that these are maybe exceptions to the rule, like we're trying to say that the binary is the universal commonality or normative. We can use all these ideas and words and try to intellectualize it, but it's not a fact that there's only a binary.
One or two, yeah. It's not like
it's just not true. Let's move on, right?
Well, there's only rock and rap, okay? Limp Bizkit,
but gender. But the thing is, there is a sexual connection to gender somewhere.
Because people have an economic incentive because it's required for reproduction, right?
But the thing is that the binary, like there's a binary that acts as pillars in the spectrum, and these two pillars are the primary things that literally dicks and vaginas, and then I think that we're making the mistake of obsessing over like gender as like the male female when humans can be whatever they want and identify as whatever they want. We can literally start
class roles completely separate from
we
our
can literally
biology.
start going like I identify as a wizard and that won't require changing anything. It'll just be manifesting.
Do self-identify as a wizard.
I hope you're comfortable
I
with the amount of wizards on this panel right now.
Yeah, don't worry. I support. I support self-identification, but if I identify myself as a wizard, no one else has to validate my identity. And if my identity requires other people to validate it, that's my ego. It's not myself.
Well, you are my rule of thumb. It's like I always
unicorn because I do self-identify as a man bear unicorn.
Okay, so here's what I say. Yeah, I say I can never
metaphysically.
I wrote a section about this, if I may. So, like with identity, like I think one thing that would be interesting if someone asked, like, "What's your gender? What do you identify as?" If you said, if your response was just, "I don't participate," but
I reject the entire system.
Yeah, you reject the entire system. But like, identity has become so tied to our atomization as a society and our separation of people. So, there's a big conglomerate of people and a system of consumerism that wants you to form an identity. And I think that's one of the big grander conspiracies is that we're trying to market everyone their identity. And that goes for, like straight Christian conservatives, because like your identity is tied to the products that you end up purchasing. So like the people that are really gung-ho and fight the whole transgender system, they are the people that are most likely to go out and buy products, buy certain types of products. They're the people that will be to validate their gender. They're the people in the Ford F-250s, F-350s that were, bought for $70,000. That's what a man buys. Yeah, exactly. And I think you really do have to see past that in order to be like happy.
That's
as
the manipulation, right? That's the culture going like, here's your programming, and here's how you should be, and here's how you should act. But like, it's a lie. Anyone can do anything, anytime. Anyone can go out.
Well, also, I mean, if you look backwards and look at like ancient traditions, even like esoteric traditions, even they say like whether you're born with a male body or a female body, you still have the male and female essences within you. You have a divine feminine aspect. You have a divine masculine aspect, which is honestly my biggest criticism of the whole trans thing. I'm like, you're focusing too much on the material. Like that's really it.
I have to agree.
And I'm like, you are, but I think most people are saying exactly what you're saying, though. Like, I feel like that's such a huge part of it. Like, there's been so much of it, no matter whether you get surgery, no matter whether you get hormones, no matter whether you change anything or not. Like me, you can be trans. That's been so much of this movement for the past 10 years. That's been the most radical shift is the self-ID addition to it. And that's saying you can be trans in your own body without altering it. You don't need to do that.
But the thing is, but if you're not altering it, you're not transitioning to anything. The trans part isn't there. So to me, it doesn't make sense. If you like, we have the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine. We have masculine and feminine within us, but your external self doesn't like that. That's still solid. That's not something like your internal self. You can have a more feminine energy to you, but masculinity and femininity are always tied to genitalia and to reproductive function. And of course, there's a huge, like there's variance within that. There's people who have both. There's people who are, and I think that language does need to evolve for that. But I think that it's a cultural template that people are following. Like I know people who transitioned because they had an existential crisis, and this was offered up to them, and it just became an option. And it's similar to like sort of like the cultural tribes that we have. Like any other cultural tribe, punkers, hip hop, it gives people a lot of meaning, and it gives people a sense of identity and a template that they can use.
To add on to that, I would also say this. I would say that if you're a male and you're transitioning to a woman, I would say no matter what, you're still going to have masculinity in you. You're still going to have also femininity in you. And if you're a woman, like if you're a female and you transition to a man, like you're still going to have
that's
both
true, but I wouldn't require the classification, the clause that you have to be transitioning for that to be true. I think that most
I'm just saying, no matter
anybody,
what you do.
No, I think like any person, like a woman, a mother is gonna have masculine archetypical qualities. A father's gonna have a feminine intuition for his daughter. Like
I just don't know where the trans part comes in.
Well, because trans might not have to do with the way we understand biology. It's not trans biology. It's transgender.
It's transmimetics.
Exactly.
Here's my opinion. If you want to treat the freedom of people to entertain the idea, you could call it that, of like transness, I would say that's a sign that humanity has evolved past your survivalist mode.
Trans classification, trans class. These are
exactly.
Gender is a social construct.
But classification systems. But classification systems exist for a reason. We can't just be like, I'm not part of the classification.
I'm hyper class.
I don't want to
Let's say,
gender. Some people
what's Cyrilin saying? What did you say? Sorry.
I was just responding. I think to what Vincent just said. Like I don't want to destroy gender altogether. Like these are here for a reason. The binary, everything. Like this is all to shape identity. Like the formation of identity. It's very important. Like in so many ways. We can't just throw it out. A lot of people do want to just destroy gender. They say abolish gender. Like that's a lot of the gender critical movement. They say abolish gender. It's just that's dangerous as fuck. That's dangerous as fuck. Abolishing gender. That's crazy. Like,
why do you think so?
It's impossible too. That too.
Exactly.
But even as a person that's like pretty into. But you think gender's plastic? Why do you think it's dangerous, Cyrilin?
Oh, I mean, like, I'm a believer in the divine order of reality. Like, I'm not trying to destroy everything, turn it back into chaos. I mean, I understand the stakes.
Then what are you trying to do?
Ascend?
Oh, me? What am I trying to do? Oh, shit! I'm trying to hopefully look at what you guys are talking about. Like a lot of what you guys have been talking about so far is what it's brought to my mind is all these straight people, straight culture,
Bernie's really straightest guy now.
I mean, no offense or anything about it. It's not like that. It's just not like a dirty word, straight. It's just the fact of the matter. Like
Bernie doesn't mean anything by it. He just happens to be straight. He was born that way.
Everyone, I'm just a straight guy.
just through so much history has been teaching their children, no. Like someone mentioned the Ford F-150 thing to reinforce their masculinity. Is no, boys, you have to buy the truck toy. You get the GI Joe. Girls, you get the Barbie. You get the little girl doll. You get the little doll to like to train it how to like feed and eat and everything. The boy gets the little GI Joe to do war. Like you get blue, you get pink. No, you can't have the pink because you're a boy. You're not allowed. Like this has all been getting passed down from the parents through straight culture, teaching them this
Did you
lie.
experience a lot of that? Like, were your parents like, you got to do this, you can't do that, that's for the other people?
Honestly, like I got a pretty California version of it, right? Like a pretty
I have
liberal
a take on
version.
that. I have a take on that.
Like,
It's a very
I'll
like
just finish it. Like no, I didn't get too much of it. Just a light version.
all right. So what I was going to say is this is what happens when like in terms of parenting, because this happened to me too on an extent. So I'm not like judging or anything. Like I'm a part of it, but
It's true. A lot of the hardcore trans I know are from like Nebraska, and their brother was like in the football team. Yeah.
I bet.
But what I was going to say is like when you raise your kids and leave it up to like material things, for example, like primarily it's like, oh, my kid will be kept busy with their toys. And then that's when you leave it open to consumerism. Is like, do I get my kid the GI Joe or do I get my kid the Barbie doll or whatever? But if you focus more on, say, experiences as opposed to material like focal points, and it's really easy to fall in this trap because of shit like video games. Like my dad fucking got me a bunch of video games and all that shit. So I'm just saying, like, if you really are worried about this, which you shouldn't be, like, then just fucking focus more on experiences. What is that?
It's a mask maracas.
Yeah, that's right. So I don't know why I'm wearing a pink shirt, but one of the thoughts I had though, because thinking about this is that, are you really sure that it's about biology when you think about how class has changed? Because like with women's culture, women's fashion, women's culture is fashionable. Gay men have designed women's clothing for generations. Women ironically wear their grandfather's hipster sweater, and it becomes like a Vogue cycle. Short skirts for this season, long skirts for that season. They kind of pick up on the trends and everything like that. But there's sort of the plasticity to what it means to be feminine. The idea of wearing blue, it used to be that pink was a man's color. You look at John Wayne, you look at the Brahmin priests of India that are like invading countries and they're like the leaders of places.
It's the dickhead color.
They're wearing pink, dude. It's macrophallic, right? Which means big head, but doesn't ironically have to do with what we're talking about. So wearing a pink was then transferred to women in the 30s, 20s and 30s. They started making magazines that said, because it used to be blue. It used to be women should wear blue, and they should have blue. If you have a daughter, have her room be navy blue so that it will subdue her emotional manner and keep her content. Because you know how women are, right? Eventually it became pink. And so for a soul to be born and to see this, and you're supposed to be activating yourself and to be told you're not supposed to use pink. That's a girl's color. But yeah, dude, like pink is an activational chakra color it's freaking Rama, Shiva, Vishnu. They love these Ganesh. They love these colors. You can't take away pink. Then you might, if you're in a really restrictive culture, say, okay, then if the only way that I can exist is to get a job as a woman, then that's the occupation. Because again, engendering is a classification. It's class culture.
Yeah, I thought getting a motorcycle was going to make me more manly, but apparently the kind of motorcycle I got, Harley Sportster, and I thought Harley was like
you got it on the wrong year,
bro. You're a leather daddy. We know
Sportsters are a girl's bike, apparently, according to all the real Harley guys. Even though
the real ones,
that makes you only slightly more
guys
manly,
who hang out
though.
at strip clubs.
That makes you slightly more manly, though.
I just ride a bicycle. Like, I think bicycles are the most zen vehicle.
Scooters, come on. Sorry.
I know we did this earlier already, but in the Proust questionnaire, like I think this is something like in a man, feminine charm. That like it started as what he likes in a man is intelligence and moral sense. It ended in feminine charm. So you're doing all.
I grew up. My father was his father died when he was very, very young, and he had a sort of idea like he had to fabricate an idea of what masculinity was, and so he spent his entire life sort of faking his way through masculinity, like I'm gonna get the wife and the 2 kids. I'm gonna work in construction. I'm gonna drink all the time. I'm gonna go to strip club, whatever he could conjure up in his head. So it was like a weird combination of like characters he saw on TV, like westerns, wrestlers. Like it was this weird hybridization, and he was
30 minutes of power bottoming a month.
Something like that. He was extremely worried about me being gay because I'm an artistic person and I'm inclined towards, I guess, having a strong feminine side. And so I am extremely masculine as well, but I have a very developed feminine side. And he was so uncomfortable with that possibility that I wasn't his distorted ideal of a man, that like I had to basically create my own based.
Do you think
on
that
the
there's like a
Vince, I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
Well, first question is, does he get along with people well?
Well, now, yeah, more so. He's no longer an alcoholic. So I stopped drinking when I was about 13. He's been sober for 20 years now.
All right. My second question is, at that time, were you like really good at solving your problems?
At which time?
I don't know, the time you're talking when he was most judgmental.
Oh, well, all I wanted to do was draw. So that's pretty
chill.
much that's all I did. So I was just, are you doing your homework? Not really. I'm drawing basically all the time.
Oh, okay. So he's criticizing
my coping mechanism.
Yeah, he's criticizing escapism, which I think is like a beautiful thing.
But it's not so much that he was criticizing escapism. It's just that I didn't have the right escapism. Like he had an idea of what a boy should be like and how they should behave.
I mean, you saw the movie, right? It's American Beauty, except in Canada. So you've seen, this is like one of my favorite movies when I was 10 years old. This is so good. It's
a little
important.
too young to watch it, but yeah.
I don't like rules. I don't care about rules. Anyway, Kevin Spacey.
But knowing Kevin Costner now to like
when I watch
Spacey, not Costner.
Spacey.
I feel like I'm getting groomed whenever I watch this movie.
Hell yeah, I do. Hell yeah, I do. Oh yeah, I do. What are you kidding me? Yeah, you do. Watch that movie like 3 more times in slow-mo. I don't know if David Plate has a synchronicity like music for it, but you got to see a sync of this. But I don't know. Basically, if you haven't seen the movie, for you out there, it's a dude who's like kind of has a realization that everything's a bunch of lies, starts to self-realize, and then he meets the neighbor next door whose father is a closet homosexual and has like
Nazi.
Don't forget the part where he like horn dogs over the daughter. There.
Closet homosexual and Nazi are like they're maybe not the same thing, but they're definitely
it's like
connected
the suppression is
on like inextricable levels.
It's a groomer movie.
It's not just it's not just Hugo Boss with the Nazis. I know we're at over time, but you gotta know like Ernst Röhm, right? Because Ernst Röhm had like a sexual relationship almost assuredly with Adolf Hitler when he lived in Vienna and even probably into Germany, because like they're manly men, dude. Like a lot of the army were gay.
Aryan sex isn't gay. Come on, man. It's
dude, if you're super like women, if you're hanging out with women, that's kind of queer, right? Like like you're hanging out with guys all the time.
There's nothing gayer than a woman.
Yeah, right. Like so these guys were like too manly for women, right? And like I think you can kind of see how that makes sense.
Well, there's all those pictures. There's all those pictures of Hitler and like these sort of like. I mean,
and by that I don't mean that like the woke culture is inevitably going to become fascist, but it's just something you have to look out for. And
I think it might.
Vegetarian,
still very possible.
Vegans.
I mean, it's pretty fascist now, so.
Yeah, I think.
Well, there has always been an appreciation. I don't mean to cut you off. In the culture for some of that, aesthetic. There's definitely some of that. You can see some of that going. A lot of the art, a lot of the fashion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I wonder if there's like a connection between the word fascism and fashion. Actually,
that's a good etymology to look
to
into.
Put something together.
I believe it.
All right.
Bundle of sticks.
Fashion is now being spelt with a C.
There's what we need.